Part 301. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3014. Rebirth of the starry sky giant mosquito. In other words, in terms of the level distinction, the southern superstar may even be one level higher than the northern superstar and other giants. The number of strong ones is probably that of the other major giants combined, and the number of senior domain lords may be even greater. It's amazing, that's why there are a lot of people who are stuck at the top of senior domain masters. In the end, out of envy, they call themselves mighty. Commonly known as self-soothing therapy. Nanyuxing's people are interesting, but, since you have lost, you have not forgotten the agreement we made before. If you can't get the sky water level treasure, don't blame me for being ruthless. Jia Yan's mind was racing, and what he said was not to continue asking. The elder in the cloak pondered for a long time, and finally sighed when Jia Yan became impatient. That's all, it must be because I have no affinity for the treasure. After saying this, a fluorescent object flew out of his cloak. This thing is contained in something like a glass bottle. Of course, this glass bottle is definitely not an ordinary thing. The objects in the fluorescence emit little bits of crystal light. If you look closely, it seems to contain stars, filling the sky, which is simply beautiful. This thing is called star dough beeswax. It is collected from a beeswax tree that belongs to the same tree family as the predecessor of the giant tree. There are a large number of beeswax bees gathered on that tree, and they reproduce from generation to generation. It takes about 10,000 bees to make it. A hive as big as a house will be gathered, and the hive will be taken and subjected to a certain refining secret method. It will take 99 and 81 years to finally refine such a small bottle of star beeswax. The function of this thing is to refine itself and concentrate the power. Pure, maybe it will be of some benefit to you. Do you think it is worth a portion of the water from the sky? Jia Yan used his brainwave power to catch the bottle of substance, his eyes lingered on it for a moment, and he was suspicious for a while. It sounds very impressive, but is it exaggeration? Does it have miraculous effects on the body? If it is comparable to the water in the sky, I can't forgive you for waiting. After all, it is better to reconcile enemies than to end them. Yes, this force is also the kind of existence that cannot offend the powerful and the strong as much as possible. If you accept it, Senior, I will naturally be very grateful. Jia Yan stretched out his feet and opened the star beeswax, only to feel a long breath floating directly into his olfactory organ. It shouldn't be an ordinary thing. Let's go. Well, thank you Senior for not killing me. The elder in the cloak wanted to say something, but when the words reached his lips, he held back, showing his attitude of surviving the disaster, and simply walked back neatly. The group of subordinates around him seemed to be undecided, but after meeting Jia Yan's eyes, they followed him with helplessness and respect. After a long time, the depths of the jungle, which had been filled with flying sand and rocks just now, returned to tranquility. Senior, I'm sorry, in order to protect myself, I had to disturb Senior's practice. The giant bear could be considered a discerning person, and he soon came forward tremblingly, with two apologetic paws, and bowed his hands to Jia Yan. Jia Yan turned around and seemed to have just seen the giant bear. If my strength is not as good as that of the great cloak elder, what will you do? This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the starry sky giant mosquito. He didn't hold any responsibility, let alone the cause and effect, he just asked this question without any clue. The other party was stunned by the question, and then Juxing also thought of the purpose of Jia Yan's words, and suddenly fell into a tangle of how to answer. After a moment, he raised his head with red eyes. Senior, I wanted to give an answer that was contrary to my heart, but I was saved by Senior. No matter how much I lie, I can't even get past my own heart, So I'll speak frankly. If you can't win the battle with that elder, I will surrender. Not only did they protect themselves because they wanted what they wanted, they also tried to protect the senior and these two young ladies. Jia Yan nodded, non-committal. The first half of the words of the giant bear may have been spoken from the bottom of his heart, but Jia Yan didn't quite believe the last sentence. He has seen this kind of existence many times, and it has nothing to do with right or wrong. It is just a struggle for survival. It is impossible for a star with a mid-level strength to be rampant in the central star field of the Milky Way, let alone an elite such as the southern giant. This giant bear is so adaptable to the wind, it must be part of life. Okay, since you are in trouble, and I see that you have been thinking about protecting Edisha and the two of you before, I will spare you for once and leave this place with me. Although the elder is defeated, it does not necessarily mean that he will be defeated. Those who are willing to leave can have more safety by walking with me. Of course, it all depends on yourself. Ah, thank you for taking care of me, senior. I am willing to go with you. The giant bear seemed to be very surprised, and his face was full of surprise, but deep down, it was unclear what he was thinking. At least Jia Yan has spoken out. If he doesn't follow him, he will be a bit ignorant. Not long after, Jia Yan led the two little ones, and the giant bear followed behind them. 4 figures, large and small, followed them like shadows, trudging deep in the jungle. Bah, there's so much grass. Little Yuer, this isn't called grass, this is called forest. It's much bigger than grass. Yeah, forest, Xiao has taken note of it. Along the way, Edisha talked nonsense with Xiao Yuer, and the giant bear looked around with some curiosity. Edisha herself is definitely not that old, and it is even hard for him to imagine that such an intelligent life exuding a strong brilliance of life, which is only 20 years old at most, can practice to such an extent, and seems to have gained a lot of knowledge along the way. Such an incredible look, where did he come from? Apparently no one would tell him that's the answer. Xiao Yuer, on the other hand, has experience that matches her age. She is a bit too young and may not even be 20 years old. She is completely ignorant and curious about everything. It's just that the talent is really terrible. It doesn't seem to be as good as that of Edissa, but the cleverness in practice is vaguely better than that of Edissa. It's just that this kind of thing can't be compared like this. Edisha doesn't seem to be as smart as Xiao Yuer, but she can meticulously achieve perfection in what she was taught. The power of the explosive thing before, the giant bear in the midst of his realization, he thought that if he fell into an explosive trap, he would probably end up with a disastrous end. Your Excellency, the Bear Clan. Just as he was thinking about something, Jia Yan in front suddenly spoke. The giant bear was shaken all over, and he clasped his fists quickly. Senior, you have broken me, just call me Little Bear Son, that's how we call our juniors in our hometown. This chapter is not finished, click next page to continue reading --U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. Bear Son. Jia Yan felt extremely weird in his heart. After thinking about it, he still couldn't come up with such a weird title. He shook his head and said, then I'll call you Mr. Xiong. Okay, thank you senior for your love. Mr. Xiong, from the looks of you, the thing that the elder came to snatch was not in your hands. But according to what you just said, that is not the case, right? I wonder if I am destined to know what the other party needs. What is it? Of course, I am not greedy for your object. Even if I know about it, I will never want to take it for myself. You can rest assured about this. Well. The giant bear's face suddenly became strange, and he was extremely hesitant. You know, in order to protect the thing in his hand, he had a narrow escape, and also offended the elders and other forces. He persisted for so long without handing over his gains, but now, he has to hand it over to such a person. A strong man encountered on the road. He was a little unwilling. Don't hesitate. If you can't explain it clearly, I won't force anything. Jia Yan said with a smile, and his expression was very calm. However, the more he looked like this, the more it made the giant bear feel a little worried. He gritted his teeth and made up his mind, "Senior, let me tell you. It is probably impossible for the bear clan to get this thing. Let this information be revealed to the ears of the strong person who should get it. It will not be considered an insult to it." Jia Yan was really interested in the information that could be regarded as such an important issue by an intermediate star. That is a piece of information from an ancient cultivator 20,000 years ago. It is said that there is a powerful being like a giant tree. Before his death, he left behind many treasures, including things that can extend the life of top experts. You must know that the powerful being, who was famous for his longevity in the beginning, does not have the long lifespan of the giant tree predecessor, but in terms of his race, he has practiced to the powerful level and lived longer than the existence of the same level. It is said that this treasure, along with the marrow cleansing book of changes, greatly improved the effect of the talent. Therefore, in the era when the powerful man passed away, countless people came one after another to search for the treasures he left behind. Unfortunately, there was no gain until a few days ago, this junior followed an accidental clue and finally found the location of the other party's treasure. Although he failed to find all the treasures, he was sure of the existence of the treasure, so he provoked many people. Few big forces come to compete. Bai Xiong said, then looked at Jia Yan who seemed unmoved, and finally said bravely, "The treasures in the world can only be obtained by those who are destined to get them. Senior, since I am incapable of obtaining the treasure, why don't I contribute this time to Senior? It is worse than being snatched away by those forces." Jia Yan finally turned around and took a deep look at him. In fact, he was not unmoved, especially after hearing the other party say that the senior who left the treasure had information about the longevity prolonging treasure. He was even more moved and wanted to develop the treasure immediately. After all, his purpose in coming to Narnia Star was to find something that would make his relatives and friends live longer. Jia Yan has also carefully observed the samples and genetic drugs of North Star. Although many of them have some whimsical techniques, Jia Yan has become a good doctor after a long illness and can understand many genetic manipulation techniques. He can see that those operations are not what they are. Incredibly advanced technology. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading --U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. Jia Yan's trip to Nanjing Superstar is something that Jia Yan attaches great importance to. Although he has not yet visited those powerful medical powers and aristocratic families, he has first gotten clues about the so-called life-prolonging treasures. For him, it is nothing more than a nap. Someone gave me a pillow. Let's see. You, the Bear Clan, can't be without a harvest. If there's anything good in the treasure land, you, the Bear Clan, will also have a share. How about you wait for the specific details and wait until then? How about that? Thank you, Senior, thank you, Senior. Zhu Xiong originally thought that he had revealed all the secrets and would not be able to gain anything in return. Unexpectedly, Jia Yan was such a talkative senior that he automatically arranged for the harvest to be distributed to him. You know, such a top powerhouse, even if he doesn't say anything, it is impossible for him not to reveal the information. Since it is in the hands of the other party, he has no right to choose. And Jia Yan's willingness to speak out shows that the other party is definitely sincere. It just so happens that the giant bear can arrange the itinerary more sincerely. I'm actually about 30,000 kilometers away. Just as Jia Yan was listening to the information about the giant bear, 5,000 kilometers away, the frustrated strong man in the cloak and the subordinates he led had returned to a big city. Haha, it's the first time a new elder goes out to handle a serious case, and he ends up like this. It's really disappointing. A sarcastic voice came from the inner hall where their forces were stationed, making the elder in the cloak look embarrassed and looked up. I saw that the person who came was another elder, but this elder looked like a woman. Of course, she was definitely not a woman from Earth. She just looked like that insect-like woman, roughly similar to Earth women. Snake Girl, what do you want to say? Just say it clearly. If you want to ridicule me for not doing something well, you can do it yourself. A powerful person. Really powerful. Let's see what abilities you have. How can you deal with it? The elder in the cloak was a little angry at first. However, the moment he was angry, he extinguished the flame again and looked at the other party with a smile on his face. Huh? Really powerful? You mean, the lower level of the domain lord? How is that possible? The woman who spoke came to him, her eyes locked on the cloaked elder. The lower body of the woman is a snake body, which is constantly squirming and continues to be 10 meters away. For Nan Yuxing, such a huge creature is already extremely rare. Yes, he is a serious territory lord, and he is also a newly arrived territory lord. This person comes from an alien planet, and he brings 2 ordinary young creatures with him. He must be a highly skilled person to dare to act like this. You Snake Girl is so courageous to lead such a weak person like a wild outing, so why not give it a try, but I warn you in advance, the senior seems to have let me go, but let me make it clear, if there are any more revengers, he is absolutely merciless. The Snake Girl hissed out her snake tongue, and the red tip of her tongue swayed in front of the elder in the cloak. Haha, your method of stimulating generals is really good. Even if you come back defeated, I will not seek death, but, a really powerful person, I would like to see him. After all, in among our forces, there are many who are said to be powerful, but in fact, there does not seem to be any truly powerful person. Tell me, how strong is the truly powerful person? Can he deal with a fake powerful person? Can it, or can it deal with 2 fake great powers? In other words, can it deal with 3 false great powers? This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading --U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. This Snake Girl elder's strength is probably at the level of powerful, but she is just a fake powerful being. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3015. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. She seemed to be ridiculing the elder of the Great Cloak, but from her words, it could be heard that she had never encountered a move from a true power in her life, at least not personally witnessed it. That's why we made some guesses about Jia Yan's strength. 1. Haha, you really think too much. Let me tell you, although I exchanged a few moves with that person, from my point of view, it seems that the other party has not really made any move at all. It is said that a truly powerful person exists. When he makes a move, they will have their own ultimate moves, and I can't even resist their ordinary moves. I guess if the other party uses a special move, I'm afraid I won't be able to resist even one move. As for how many fake powerful people are needed to deal with him, the elder in the cloak pondered, and after a while, he raised his head again and said, I'm afraid it will take at least 4 fake powers. Without this number, it must be almost impossible to deal with a real power, at least that judging from the experience of fighting against me, I think you need at least this many fake powers, maybe even 6. 4. The Snake Girl was startled. The old man in the big cloak is a being who has just been promoted to the level of fake powerful, but the Snake Girl will not despise the other person's vision. After all, as a mysterious elder, this fake powerful elder was able to simply communicate with others before he was promoted. Their fake powers can compete with 1 or 2 moves, and now that they have been promoted, they may not be as powerful as fake powers like her, but they are still much stronger than the average new fake powers. But such a fake powerful person also said that it takes 4 people of the same level to defeat the true powerful, or even 6. This shows how shocking the world is to the existence of true power. No wonder the other party dares to take children to travel around the mountains and rivers. I know it, but since you said that only 6 people can defeat that guy at most, it is not surprising. There are no really powerful people in our power. But there are a lot of fake great powers, so if that doesn't work, it's not impossible for me to take the lead in finding all 6 false great powers and killing them. The old man in the big cloak grinned after hearing this. You have good connections and can find all 6 major existences, but this matter has nothing to do with me. I will no longer interfere with the so-called treasure. It is too risky for me to provoke a true power. If you want to find, I will leave their direction of travel and contact information with the surveillance team to you, and you can go find your own death. In the mountains and forests. Jia Yan had already found a reason and once again found a place deep in the dense forest to settle. For many local strong men, Jia Yan was not afraid of the extremely dangerous deep mountains and old forests. However, it must be mentioned that Jia Yan was also surprised by the jungle of Nangxingxing. It can only be said that seeing it once is better than hearing it 100 times. I had known that the southern superstar, hidden dragon, and crouching tiger, would not be surprised to encounter top existences anywhere. Only after I came here did I truly understand the meaning of this sentence. In a small wooden house built simply from trees, Jia Yan pondered in his room. For strong men like them, building this kind of house takes no time at all, and this house was not built by Jia Yan, but by the giant bear. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. In less than 10 minutes, a 3-story house covering an area of more than 1,000 square meters appeared. Except for helping to level an old tree, Jia Yan did nothing else during the whole process. The customs of South Star are different from those of North Star. There seems to be a strong sense of hermit and power here, and the scale and method are different from those in other places, which is very strange. Jia Yan carefully looked at the information given by the giant bear. No matter how far behind Southern Star is in science and technology, it is impossible that it does not even have an intellectual brain. To put it bluntly, there are too many opportunities here, and you can see the results of cultivation due to opportunities, which greatly adds to the atmosphere of cultivation. It's strange to say, but the green coverage of trees and the like is large, and the actual minerals and the like, I think it is not much more powerful than the northern superstar, but it has nurtured a powerful civilization that far exceeds the northern superstar. Nothing happens for no reason. Presumably the top beings who created the North Superstar and the South Superstar would not deliberately create inequality among the superstars, and all of this is just the result of certain differences among the superstars. The giant bear is a so-called coaster. With stellar strength, it can probably come and go freely in various places relatively safely, so it started to collect intelligence and explore passages. This is in the world where the vegetation is extremely lush and growing. In the southern giant, where the cycle and speed are far higher than other places, it is a very important and necessary occupation. The profession of the giant bear shows that he will have a large amount of various information and little-known secrets in his hands. The so-called powerful legacy is just one of the pieces of information he possesses. Should I go and see it? Jia Yan is quite hesitant. To be honest, he previously thought that not taking the treasure would be detrimental to his own moral interests. However, this matter does not necessarily have great temptation for him, a lower-ranking territory lord. The forces searching for the giant bear are destined not to miss the so-called true power legacy, and the giant bear is unwilling to disclose the information to me directly. He only said that he would go with me. He at least has a chance to win an edge. Opportunity. If we really operate it, there will definitely be a lot of friction. Normally, Jia Yan would just go there, but today, he led the two Aidisha to the southern superstar. This is a journey to find medicinal materials and increase their knowledge. As for the longevity thing in the inheritance, Jia Yan made a sideways glance at the giant bear on the way, and vaguely realized that the other party was not so sure about this. In other words, after all the hard work, he might still be with the giant bear. After the forces start to rub against each other again, there is a high possibility that he will come up empty-handed. This made Jia Yan ponder. Rather than going to such a place that may not necessarily be fruitful, it may be more efficient to find some well-known major medical facilities, or inquire about the residences of some medical experts and hermits. After all, he is a lower-level territory lord, and is known as really powerful, with great face. The so-called hermit expert is probably willing to take action for him. Now he was undecided. How about I try this beeswax? Jia Yan had just used the water in the sky, and the power was boiling, and he had consumed some of the energy that the white dolphin finally swallowed. The nourishing effect of this beeswax was not needed for the time being. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the starry sky giant mosquito. So he took out part of it and sipped it slightly on his mouth part. The energy rose, and Jia Yan nodded as expected. It is indeed of the same level as the water in the sky, but the direction of nourishment is different. It is difficult to distinguish between high and low. But for me now, it is better than nothing. He has been improved again. No matter how much his strength has improved, his body is no longer in a state of overflowing. His desire for things like beeswax is not strong. Maybe after some time, his cultivation will reach the next bottleneck. There may be demand for this beeswax. However, one bottle is a bit too little. Anyway, Jia Yan put it away. Even if it is not used in the future, it is still a great thing to take it out for the younger generations such as Aditha Xiao to use. The sky was like this as Jia Yan was doing nothing. After sorting out many situations and discoveries, it entered the early morning of the next day. I had a good sleep. Well, Sister Aditha, I slept well too, Baba. The two little girls, who were growing up, jumped out of bed full of energy early in the morning, laughing and joking, as if they had endless energy. The giant bear who had nothing to do last night bought several toys in the surrounding mountains and forests. As soon as the two of them got up, they were very surprised to play with those toys, such as wooden roller coasters, swings, and seesaws. Throughout the morning, the two of them, the little guy, kept laughing and laughing. I've met Senior. The giant bear was operating the toys when he noticed Jia Yan walking out of the room with an expressionless face and hurriedly stepped forward to greet him. You have a heart. Jia Yan looked at the giant bear and knew that this guy was probably the same type of wonderful person as Leda. And his methods and abilities, from the current point of view, should be stronger than Leda's. Of course, this is not talking about strength. In terms of strength, Leda is a mid-level galaxy powerhouse. Compared with the mid-level star for a giant bear, it's way too much. Thank you for the compliment, Senior. After a few days of getting along with each other, Jukshan finally figured out some of Jia Yan's character. He began to prepare breakfast in an orderly manner. There are many vegetations in the southern superstar, and life is also extremely diverse. This also leads to the delicacies of the southern superstar, which are probably the best in the entire galaxy. At least judging from Jia Yan's experience of traveling in such a small area, there is no other delicacy he has ever tasted. It's not the kind that makes people drool all over the floor. As a local and a mountaineer who has worked hard and traveled in the wild for many years, the food cooking methods he has mastered are not to say miraculous, but at least he is excellent at handling them. Yeah. It's breakfast, it's so delicious. It's delicious, Baba. Whether it is vegetables, wild vegetables, or some meat-eating dishes, they are all the essence, and the two little ones who eat them have to swallow them with their tongues. After breakfast, Jia Yan was silent for a while. Looking at the two little ones who ran to play on the amusement facilities before setting off, Jia Yan finally shook his head. "Tell me, what do you want, or what do you want me to do?" The giant bear standing next to Jia Yan was stunned, with an unnatural expression. He used conspiracy, and over the past few days, he had served Jia Yan and the two little girls comfortably, which made Jia Yan vaguely accept his love. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading --U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. Now, as expected, I got a personal inquiry from Jia Yan. "Sir." He thought for a while and said bluntly, "Actually, I have thought about it for a long time and struggled with many possibilities. However, I guess not everything will go as I wish. Now I have two thoughts in my mind. Heaven and man are at war. I wonder if the adults can make a decision for the villains." He was quite bold. If he had two ideas, he would probably want Jia Yangxuan. Either way will take him. "Wonderful man." Jia Yan smiled non-committally and said, "You tell me. First of all, I still really want to go to the heritage site and have a look. When I first discovered it, to be honest, a mountaineer brother who was traveling with me died. If I can't see clearly for him what is there, I will feel sad. Unwilling to do so." Jia Yan looked at the other party and said nothing. What kind of brother or not? No matter whether this person exists or not, Jia Yan doesn't believe it. In the giant bear's heart, this person is so important. At most, it is some kind of tool to win the ripples in Jia Yan's heart. Finding that Jia Yan didn't express anything, and his expression didn't even change, the giant bear felt bad and blamed himself a little. Playing such a little trick in front of a powerful person might make the other person feel uncomfortable, and maybe both of his ideas will come to nothing. The second thought is, if you don't have the idea of exploring the inheritance, I want to serve you and the two ladies. At least during the time when you are in Nanjing Star, I am willing to serve you and so on. Speaking of this, Jia Yan was a little surprised. He thought that this second idea was to ask Jia Yan to protect him. But come to think of it, this is no different from asylum. Specifically mentioning the word service, and thinking about the meticulous care that Jia Yan and Aidisha had received in the past few days, Jia Yan suddenly understood that this guy had a pretty good plan. At this point in his conspiracy, the giant bear can be described as a very outstanding person. Haha, you're not a good person to be a coaster. Are you going to let me decide one of these two ideas for you? The giant bear nodded nervously. It's nice, straight to the point and no mincing words. Jia Yan thought for a while and said, before I make a decision for you, you have to tell me clearly whether there is really a high possibility that there is a life-extending plan in the so-called inheritance. At least there must be some clues. Otherwise, I won't make this trip. Prolong life? In fact, a few days ago, Juxian had discovered that Jia Yan and his party were looking for longevity-prolonging things in Southern Star. But the more he looked at it, the weirder he became, because Jia Yan, a powerful man, had an extremely long lifespan. From the appearance, he was definitely not someone who was about to live long. As for the two little brats, not to mention, their life has just begun, so why would you think about finding a life extension plan? He denied his guess at that time, but he didn't expect that today, Jia Yan would also confirm it. The almost impossible possibility turned out to be the real answer. Well, sir, if I say that I am not completely sure that there is what you want there, what decision will you make? He said tentatively. Jia Yan couldn't help but stare at him helplessly. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. Well, he was the one who said before that there may be clues to longevity, but now he is the one who says that he is not completely sure. This giant bear is a man of clever words and nonsense. If I'm not sure, or the probability is low, I won't go. I can't afford to waste this time. But it's completely impossible. That's not the case. The powerful one has a long lifespan as its main feature. There is a high probability that he will leave some clues. Even if he doesn't have any direct materials or plans, he is bound to have some clues. There are such things as the remains of his body. Perhaps with your strength, sir, you can easily find relevant clues. The giant bear is still watertight. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3016. Rebirth of the starry sky giant mosquito. Well, this is the Dieter of the eloquent person. He made it sound like he had said it, but also seemed like he didn't say anything. In the end, no matter what Jia Yan decided, it seemed that it had nothing to do with him. This kind of person is very shameless, but he should be the type who can live a long time. Jia Yan thought for a while, and the energy was released. Two little ones who were cheering for the roller coaster ride in the distance screamed and fell upside down from the sky. However, they did not fall to the ground, but were held steady by Jia Yan's claws. He looked at the little ones and the giant bear, and said calmly, "Anyway, there is no other good place to go for the time being, so let's go explore the ruins." "Yeah. Let's explore the ruins." "That's great, Baba." The two little guys cheered and clapped vigorously. The giant bear also showed a faint smile. In fact, he really didn't care. Although he originally wanted to see the ruins, the forces chasing him will definitely target that area recently. Jia Yan's protection is not absolutely, he is still in danger, so if he doesn't go, it will be a good thing for him. Of course, with the help of a truly powerful person, it might be beneficial to sneak over there and take a look, so it's not impossible to go. Now that Jia Yan has made the decision to go and have a look, he fully agrees with this behavior. Walk. The four figures started to act, but before that, Jia Yan looked at the giant bear lightly, and said something that made his scalp numb. "In the future, don't play with such petty tricks." "I won't like it." "Yes." When the giant bear heard this, he felt sweat all over his body. He was so frightened that the sweat quickly soaked his fur, and he was shivering in fear. He understood that he had too many little schemes. Although they were all conspiracy, they had already caused this powerful being to feel uncomfortable. He quickly restrained his many calculations and kept most of them in his heart. After all, if he really wants to explore the ruins and encounter enemies, he will completely rely on this mighty for protection. "Sir, I know that there is a public airship station about 3,000 kilometers southwest of Giant Tree City. Taking a spaceship from there will be much faster than my own movement, and it will be much less troublesome." He didn't dare to have any extra thoughts and just provided the information he knew. "Well, then let's go in that direction. Try to hide as much as possible on the way and don't alert others. After all, I don't want to be followed by a group of people when we get there." Edisha and Xiao Yu jumped up behind them. "Take a spaceship. Take a spaceship." Although they have ridden on many spaceships, they may not have many opportunities to ride on spaceships in the Superstar, so they are naturally excited. Of course, even if they sit there often, they will still be happy with how excited they are. After all, this is the nature of children. In the mountain forest where towering ancient trees rise from the ground, the four of them walked along a path that may or may not exist. These winding trails made Jia Yan aware of the so-called road conditions in Naniastar, as well as the difficulties and dangers faced by residents here. Even stellar mid-levels like the giant bear can only become the best among roller coasters. When the venerable level comes to the outside world, life and death are unpredictable, and ordinary people are even weaker. it is even more difficult to move forward in a corner. This chapter is not finished, click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the starry sky giant mosquito. The distance of 3,000 kilometers is a small territory that cannot be compared to the gravel in the entire southern star, but for the vast mountains and forests, it is actually large enough, and at least you can see a lot of local customs. Under the familiar leadership of the giant bear, they visited several cities and even took a short nap in the city. Because it is a city transformed from mountains and forests, although it is not like the city of giant trees where the city towers on the trunk, the mountains and forests are integrated into almost every aspect of the city. For example, there are almost no high-rise buildings in the houses. They are all built on the roots of giant trees and are adjacent to green. Although the locals have long been tired of the lush mane color, Jia Yan and 3 other foreigners found it unique and pleasing to the eye. Haha, ladies, if you want to participate in tonight's carnival, you can go. The carnival in this city is a very famous entertainment project. Yeah, join the carnival. Editha led the little fish, jumped up and went out happily. Jia Yan and Zhu Xiang, who were following behind, looked at each other slightly. This is already the 5th day that they have approached the land of 3,000 kilometers. In the past 5 days, Jia Yan used his subspace ability to lead the 3 people through when he had time. The speed was neither too slow nor too fast, but he was almost close to the spaceship. Port City. Sir, someone is indeed targeting us, but I don't know if he is an enemy. If you have any back UPS in the city, go ahead and arrange it. I only need to know the identity of the other party, so there is no need to alert others for the time being. Yes. After accepting the order, the giant bear disappeared quite wisely. Over the past few days, Jia Yan has gradually understood that the intermediate stars may seem weak, but they are by no means without any status. In this area, the giant bears have some friends and backup men in almost every city, no matter how small or small. All of them can be of some help. It can be said that the subordinates' temporary recruitment was very successful. The little ones were overjoyed. The lights were already on the street and there was a huge crowd. Master, that giant bear is very smart. Master, do you want to take him with you in the future? Adisha was not a little fish. She came to Jia Yan's side 2 steps behind and asked in a low voice. Jia Yan shook his head calmly, no need, this person has his own way, and we actually have a talent over there. Compared with him, he is actually not that bad. Oh. Editha just mentioned it, and she also knew that a mid-level galaxy existence, Leda, was definitely more outstanding and more useful than the giant bear. Wow, the performance over there is so exciting. Xiao Yuer's pink figure squeezed in and out of the bustling crowd. It looked like a bloated figure, but in fact it was very flexible. In the blink of an eye, he enjoyed many performances, which was an eye-opener. What's the point? Brother Master has seen performances in many places that are better than this. Really? I want to go see it in the future. Xiao Yuer believed it directly, showing a look of longing. Stop teasing her, what will she do seriously? I'm not teasing her. We have seen better performances than this in many places. For example, in the stellar academic domain, the stellar battle domain, and the divine realm, there are many wonderful performances. The best one is definitely when the world was created, the performance of worshipping gods inside was very powerful. This chapter is not finished, click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the starry sky giant mosquito. Jia Yan was slightly startled after hearing that Edisha knew all her treasures. It seems so. He has experienced many similar beautiful things in his life. If Edisha hadn't mentioned them, these memories would have been thrown into the dust in the corner, and even he would have forgotten them. Wow, Xiao Yuer is so unwilling. I have never experienced this before. Jia Yan stretched out his foot, gently brushed Xiao Yuer's pink head, and said with a smile, "I will take you there in the future. These places are not difficult to reach." Jia Yan is right. Today, he is no longer the person who went to many places that were considered dangerous at first, and was really dangerous. For example, he narrowly escaped death and fought out the great spiritual realm from inside. If he returns again, he will surely there were not even a few serious galaxy-level people there. Now that he was visiting his old place again, no one would dare to fart. Of course, these are just words to appease the child. If Xiao Yuer doesn't mention it later, he won't really take the other person for a walk after all. It takes a lot of time on the road. Indeed, not only the places we have been to, but also the many people we have encountered. What is happening now? It is unknown whether some of the weaker or injured ones are still alive. Jia Yan looked at the brightly lit streets and the crowds of various creatures, feeling a little dazed for a moment. The powerful ones in the universe are also intelligent creatures, similar to the people on Earth, but they only live longer. In terms of interpersonal relationships, it is actually the same. After passing by some people who have missed or got along with each other, even if there is a strong desire to reunite, there is a greater possibility that missing is eternal and they will never see each other again. Some faint complex emotions echoed in my mind. "Sir, I'm back." Just when Jia Yan entered his own world again, a respectful voice came from behind. Jia Yan looked back and saw that the giant bear had returned. "How's it going? Did you get any useful information?" "Yes, the information I got is that the beings who are spying on us obviously do not belong to the same force. One of them should be the obvious force from Giant Tree City, and the other side seems to have been with the same force. You take action on that strong man." Jia Yan nodded without surprise. "It is a matter of course that Giant Tree City will send strong men or investigation teams to monitor him here. This area is still within the influence of Giant Tree City. Maybe the city managers are all nominal subordinates of Giant Tree City. Knowing that he is a top expert, how come the other party doesn't pay more attention to it?" On the other hand, Jia Yan thought that he should still be targeted by the elder in the cloak. As a local snake, he is somewhat capable. Jia Yan seems to have tried hard to hide his efforts, but in the eyes of those who are interested, it is not difficult to track him. Jia Yan didn't have too many worries. There was still a long way to go, and the other party didn't know where their specific destination was. Now that they were tracked, the next step was to get rid of them. "You have done a good job, just stay with me. I think it will be difficult for the other party to deal with you directly." "Yes." The giant bear had been out for a while and was already feeling a little uneasy, but now he felt relieved after hearing Jia Yan's comfort. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. The four figures still didn't pay too much attention to the situation outside, but during this period, the outside world would not be as relaxed because of their calmness. The giant bear just walked out of the opponent's team. It seemed that he was looking for some friends and asked about us. "Huh? So that being is aware of our surveillance. You must have known it for a long time." Although in the southern superstar like us, the perception has been reduced to the extreme level, but as a powerful person, the perception ability is still beyond our imagination. That's all. This time in Giant Tree City, we can't do that thing of shooting ourselves in the foot. Let's retreat a little. We don't need to keep an eye on them so closely. Try to be kinder. Yes. The spies of the Giant Tree City forces, as spies who came with a mission, had some understanding of what Jia Yan had done in the location of Giant Tree City. But the little bit of information they knew made the other party look at him with suspicion. Now that the figure was discovered, Giant Tree City had no need to fight with the opponent, so it chose to retreat and maintain the friendship between the two sides. The other end doesn't think so. "Oh? That giant bear is quite capable. He has friends everywhere. The existence of mountaineers is really tricky. You can find a way to survive in any situation. Tisk tisk. Try to hide it, but don't stay away. In the other person's heart it should also be clear that killing our spies is useless. On the other side, there was a calm and strong creature, hiding in the darkness, saying the above words to his subordinates. For the forces here, it is absolutely impossible for them to give up. As a result, Jia Yan soon obtained new information in this small town. That is, after filtering the characters, the party that is more hostile to them emerges. Haha, are they the ones who have been behind me for a long time? I have already noticed their existence and thought that the two sides were working together. But now that they have exposed their flaws, how should I decide? Kill them or keep them? It was obvious to Jia Yan that he didn't want to do something that would make the other party guess. The other party obviously never thought that a master like him would kill some spies. Jia Yan really didn't want to, but what he didn't like was that a big fight would force the city's official forces to step in. If there was a way to get rid of the opponent without making any big noise, he would not hesitate to try it. What a coincidence, he had just such a method in hand. In the dead of night, the crowds began to disperse on the streets, and people returned with lingering interest. And in a corner where the woods covered a wider area, darkness shrouded the area, and the street lights did not illuminate it, Jia Yan moved. Edisha and the giant bear following Jia Yan, even though they had stellar strength, did not make the slightest reaction at this moment. Jia Yan entered the subspace, and in less than half a second, another shadow of feet appeared 100 meters behind him. After a slight pop sound, he disappeared into the dark corner again. Jia Yan at this end reappeared where the afterimage had been. Gu Jingbuobo walked forward as always, without any strange feeling. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading --U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. The giant bear rubbed his eyes. He seemed to see Jia Yan's figure blurred for a moment. Maybe I'm too tired. Alas, my nerves have been tense recently and I have a neurasthenia. He sighed bitterly, feeling that he was working too hard. If it wasn't for his life, he would have given up long ago due to his temperament. The four of them left together again. Chapter 19 Tracking. Come to Cheateon.com to subscribe. Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3017. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. In the dark corner behind the four people, several figures soon gathered. They looked at the colleague on the ground who seemed to have died suddenly, and were silent for a long time. The opponent's strength far exceeds our imagination. Even up to this point, we still don't know what methods he used. This is a strong man at the pinnacle of a star. That's all, let's try to keep a certain distance from the target person in our next actions. There is a huge gap between our strength and his. Yes. This group of figures quickly disappeared, along with the miserable corpse. Lord Jia Yan, there is news from the outside that the spies from the two major forces guarding us seem to have some scruples and have kept a considerable distance from us. This way, we can feel more at ease. Yeah, maybe their conscience discovered it. When Jia Yan said this, Juxian always felt that Jia Yan was already prepared. He couldn't help but think of the moment when Jia Yan's figure blurred that he had witnessed in the dark corner. However, he did not get any explicit instructions from Jia Yan, and he was not sure whether his judgment was accurate. I was afraid that the true answer to this incident would be taken to the grave with him for the rest of his life. No matter whether the two groups in the dark caused any harm due to Jia Yan's actions, in short, Jia Yan and his four major existences still left the city where the multi-day sacrificial activities were in full swing the next day. Edisha and Xiao Yu were quite sorry, but they were very well behaved and didn't cry or make any fuss. If you follow Jia Yan, you will surely see similar excitement. Edisha, Come sit in the back row with me and I'll give you a good look. Okay. On the wide road, Atisha came to Jiayan obediently. During their trip, they did not choose to continue walking or travel through subspace, but directly drove a second-hand car bought by Giant Bear. The performance of this second-hand car was not bad, it was the ceiling of the civilian version, and it sat smoothly. Jiayan was happy to take the opportunity to test the two little ones. When Atisha got closer, Jiayan asked her to show her the power of Onmyeto. I saw the little girl rubbing her two short and fleshy little hands together, and a pure power bloomed in her little hands. Jiayan's heart skipped a beat, secretly thinking that it was true. Disperse, when did you start to master this level of Onmyeto ability? Jiayan asked Aidissa to dissipate the yin-yang Dao power she had accumulated, and asked a little strangely. Aditha laughed, thought for a while and said, "It was a long time ago. I could do this when I was creating the world." Jiayan nodded, even more curious in his heart. At that time, Atisha behaved quite evilly in the creation of the world. The reason was actually very simple, that is, Atisha participated in the creation of the world, and she could clearly account for the local people in it. After leaving the creation of the world, her calculation ability will be vastly different. Therefore, in the created world, Atisha has shown her combat prowess several times. Jiayan also believes that it is her unique role in that world that leads to her outstanding combat prowess. But when she came to the outside world, Jiayan realized that she had mastered the yin and yang Dao of the 8 classics, and it was not an ordinary master. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. Did you know that among the many yin-yang Dao disciples and strong men I have taught, the yin-yang Dao ability you have now mastered can already be ranked first in the ranking? He said seriously. Atisha nodded vigorously without any doubt. I know, isn't Atisha very powerful? It seems that you don't understand everything. Then you know this. Why didn't you tell me directly before so that I could arrange more professional training courses for you or teach you more yin and yang Dao? She shook her head like a rattle. No, Master Brother's time is very precious, not to mention that Atisha can do this because of my computing power. Maybe this advantage will change in the future. Atisha's talent is not particularly good, so there is no need for my brother and master to waste time and energy. It turns out that she didn't say it on purpose. Don't do this in the future. Your yin-yang Dao ability may even inspire me after seeing it. If you become stronger in the future, with your calculation power, it is likely to be of great help to my yin-yang Dao, so there is no need to hide it. I will explain some technical things to you. I believe you can understand it quickly. It will be of no harm to me, so you don't have to worry about wasting my time. Aditha blinked her big eyes, and her watery eyes quickly turned into crescents. She nodded vigorously. Well, then Aditha will always ask the Master Brother questions from now on. Jiayan touched her little head, and the little one showed enjoyment like a kitten. Then Jiayan asked her to ask a few questions, which were indeed extremely harsh and high-end. The questions were asked from several strange angles. The questions made Jiayan speechless and he thought for a long time before giving the answer. The little girl reborn by the computer is indeed different. After Jiayan was asked several times by Atisha, even he himself soon had to conceive of some yin and yang loopholes that he had never thought of, and he immediately felt until you gain something. Okay, let's see how you are come over. You can practice hard for a few hours later and understand what I just answered. Yes. Atisha left, and Jiayan let out a long breath. If he continues to ask questions, I'm afraid he will really be questioned. It's not that Atisha's cultivation ability is so strong, but that she has a computer personality and likes to ask questions about many principled and numerical things. This is very annoying, and if she asks too many questions, she will feel like she's trying to get into trouble. Jiayan had to stop the Q/U0026A with her. I was worried that Xiao Yuer's apprentice, who was also extremely talented, would ask some questions that would give Jia Yan a headache. Fortunately, this little guy's strength is still too low, and she is young, so the innocent and childlike words she asked were both simple and cute, making Jia Yan feel comfortable while answering easily and freely. After all, even Jia Yan was a little unhappy being questioned by a brat as young as Aditya. Xiao Yuer is a normal child. Aditya needs to learn more. Jia Yan couldn't help but complain about Aditya. In this way, time flies by. This second-hand car flew on the road for a day, covering more than 1,500 kilometers in an instant. Approaching the city where the spaceship was boarded, Jia Yan and the giant bear looked at each other and ordered the girls to get off. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. They changed cars at a friend's factory that Juxian had already contacted. The whole process took less than 2 minutes. Then the two cars drove parallel to the road and parted ways at a fork. Jia Yan nodded as he watched the second-hand car being driven away by his giant bear friend. Although the car they exchanged for was not that high-end, it was still not small, allowing the four of them to relax inside. We are about to arrive at the port. Our deception may not be able to hide for that long, so I have purchased a ticket for the ship to leave immediately. As long as the car opens to the other side, I can board the ship immediately, and I also asked a few friends to dress up as after seeing our appearance, they will board several other spaceships to hide our presence, so that our whereabouts will be more difficult for them to detect. Does the spaceship have a setting for disembarking midway? Jia Yan suddenly asked. The other party smiled directly and nodded. Sir, you are an alien visitor. You still don't understand the rules of our spaceship. In fact, it is no different from the kind of transportation in the countryside. As long as you are strong enough, you can get off the spaceship anytime and anywhere. Waiting for you once you get on it, you will know that it is not as high-end as you thought. Jia Yan was non-committal and nodded. Not long after, the city scenery passed by in a flash. This city that can house the only spaceship port within thousands of kilometers is actually second to none among the cities they have passed through before. At least the roads are much more formal, and even the high-rise buildings built next to the giant trees are better. It looks like the sense of high technology is very strong. It's just that Jia Yan and others didn't have time to visit here. After they arranged the boat tickets, they drove directly to the so-called port without stopping. There are no huge lakes in the southern giant, so the so-called port is actually not a real port, but the airport. Giant airship-like spaceships were parked in the open space, but there was a giant river next to it that was rare to see in the southern giant. There were also a large number of boats in it, probably some types of yachts. Wow, it's so big. Big, too big. Aidisha and Xiao Yuer sang together. Jia Yan followed the giant bear calmly. Building communities of this level may be rare in South Star, but compared to the outside world, it is nothing. Guys, please come with me. Someone came to answer, speaking in a low voice. Thank you. Go back and tell your leader that I will treat him to a drink next time we meet. Hee, it's not enough to invite him alone, we brothers have to invite him too. That's natural. The giant bear exchanged a few words with a mysterious visitor, then led Jia Yan and others around several buildings. When they walked out of another building, they were surrounded by many people dressed similarly to them. Even Jia Yan's giant mosquito body has an actor, but the appearance is similar, but the inside is naturally different. Guys, thank you very much. If someone arrests you, don't resist. I'm sure they won't do anything to you. Yes. Those large and small creatures were divided into combinations of Jia Yan and others, and scattered in all directions. The gazes and gazes around him made Jia Yan keenly aware that there were indeed some spies observing the surroundings. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. After they calmly boarded the spaceship headed for their target destination, the giant bear said a few words to the bold being who led them there, and then followed the seats to where they belonged. "You are quite popular." "No, in fact, I just asked a few friends, and they volunteered." "It's not that they are popular, but they have a good eye for people, and they all make good friends." Jia Yan said nothing more, just nodded and silently observed the scenery outside the spacecraft. It can be seen that some sneaky figures followed the beings pretending to be them, boarded other spaceships, and the spaceship sailed away. Those pretenders had not yet disembarked, and they were actually putting on a good show. I am afraid they would take them with them. Those secret observers are wandering around in certain places in the outside world. There seem to be some secret spies on this spaceship, but with such a small number of people, there is nothing to fear. Just find an opportunity to get rid of them. Jia Yan felt it and was still satisfied with the status quo. The two little kids were even more excited about the scene at this time. They had the mentality of children, and the current behavior was like a detective movie, which naturally made them excited. Of course, this is just them. Jia Yan is actually just having some fun. Apart from that, the most important thing is that he wants to save himself from trouble. Otherwise, even if there are forces in front of him, it will just be a push. However, after the spacecraft started, this so-called spaceship journey still gave Jia Yan more or less unexpected joy. The spacecraft flies at an altitude of about 300 kilometers, with a panoramic view of the endless green scenery below. The spacecraft has a dedicated energy channel, which can protect it from the attacks of a large number of flying birds. This also makes the whole process smooth and peaceful, with few the passengers who felt the sense of crisis were all smiling, and they were much more polite to each other. They must be all high-end people here. In this way, Jia Yan was influenced by the travel atmosphere created and immersed in it. On the side of the passenger ship, a large number of tourists gathered here, and some were holding glasses of red wine. "Wow, it looks great over there." "It looks great here too." The two little kids were running around and chirping, but they did not attract much dissatisfaction from the guests. On the contrary, more people looked at them with gentle eyes. "Sir, this is the famous wine on this route. It is said that it is brewed from the fallen branches and leaves of the giant tree in the distance. It has the effect of strengthening the body and is a very important local specialty." The giant bear brought a glass of wine and handed it to Jia Yan to taste. The two of them were just sitting on the side of the boat, looking down at the refreshing scenery of the sea of trees. "Is it made of giant branches and leaves?" Jia Yan smiled, put his mouthpiece into the wine glass, and took a sip. This was indeed what he was thinking. This is probably just a wine made from the fallen leaves of the saplings around the giant tree. At most, it has a bit of the smell of the giant tree itself, but it is far from being the wine of the branches and leaves of the giant tree itself. Of course, it is quite kind to be able to use the branches and leaves around the giant tree. After all, according to inquiries, the price of this wine is not particularly expensive. Good wine, Giant Bear, tell me, are there too many similar wines, similar delicacies, and similar scenery on this southern star? This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. Jia Yan felt this and asked lightly. The giant bear was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't understand why Jia Yan said this to him. He thought about it and said, "Southern Star, there are countless seas of trees that stretch endlessly, and the food and wine are immeasurable. As for the scenery, I guess there are similar scenery wherever you go. But my lord, you come from the outside world, what does the outside world look like? But it is quite curious to me. A few years ago, I had an opportunity, and a domain lord level being was willing to let me go out to do things for him. Unfortunately, I didn't grasp it, and I don't know if I will regret it for the rest of my life. Chapter 20 Drinking. Please subscribe from Gideon. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3018. Rebirth of the starry sky giant mosquito. These words were extremely boring. Jia Yan took another sip of wine, thought about it for a moment and said, "Well, the wine is indeed good wine." Unfortunately, the conversation was off topic and boring. I went back. After he finished speaking, he returned directly to his seat on the ship. The giant bear behind him, on the other hand, was at a loss and didn't know what his answer was that made Jia Yan uncomfortable. He, you are so stupid. At some point, Editha and the crazy little fish came to the giant bear. Am I stupid? What's wrong? My master is actually very lonely. If you can speak into his heart, maybe you will be allowed to follow him for a while. Maybe you will benefit a lot, but it's a pity that you can't even hear what he wants to hear in his heart. Can't say anything. The giant bear was helpless and didn't know how to respond. He is not a roundworm in Jia Yan's belly, nor is he someone who regularly works as a servant. He is just a passerby. Although he is well-rounded, he still cannot be so perfect after becoming someone else's retainer. It can only be said that it is fate or not. He does not really want to be a real follower of Jia Yan. As for the benefits, it must be a bit distressing, but in life, not everyone wants to be stronger, or if he wants to move towards higher goals, he believes that it is enough for him to maintain his status quo and become the mainstay among the roller coasters. Everyone has his or her own ambitions, and that's really the case with this thing. Time passed quickly. In the cabin of the ship, Jia Yan still focused part of his attention on the group of people who were monitoring him. They have already sent out the news from the ship's warehouse, but they are not sure whether the people inside the ship's warehouse are the real bodies of Jia Yan and others. The southern superstar is no better than an ordinary planet, and its communication methods are far from advanced, let alone in the wilderness. The methods they have set aside have to be collected by other nearby colleagues before the forces behind them know about them. Finally one day, Jia Yan regained his clarity from the maintained state of cultivation. Edisha, Xiao giant bear, it's time for us to go. Okay. Everyone responded with a roar. Today is night, the bright moonlight is shining brightly in the sky, and there is more than one moon, but one hanging above the head in the sky. In the distance, there are more than 10 or 20 moons, large and small, hanging in the sky. These are actually the moons from various places in the southern giant. They have different colors, some are fiery red, some are light blue, some are white, and some are purple and translucent, so beautiful that it is breathtaking. Above their heads was a blood-red moon, reflecting the earth, and the sea of trees was covered with a layer of dim blood-red light. When they came to the side of the ship, some male and female guests took advantage of the moonlight and bathed in the light to talk about love. When they saw the group coming, they quickly let go of each other, looking a little embarrassed. Let's get off the boat. Under the gazes of these love talkers, Jia Yan led Edisha and others and jumped down without saying a word. Some females tried to scream, but found that no sound came out of their throats. Everyone was surprised. Some males even wanted to move, but they couldn't even move. They just watched the four people leaving in a daze. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the starry sky giant mosquito. It was not until 2 or 3 hours later that the group of guests on the platform were discovered to be abnormal and finally rescued. It's a pity that after such a long time, those monitors want to get off the ship. Times have changed, and the fast ship may have flown hundreds of kilometers. The hundreds of kilometers to the South Star definitely determine the distance between life and death. Even if they go to pursue them immediately, they will definitely miss all the traces of the other party. Damn it, there are actually top experts among them. It would be difficult for non-domain lords to freely fall from such a height. Among the monitors, some were helpless. The other people's eyes were solemn, and they even felt a little lucky. You know, those who dare to blatantly jump off the spacecraft from hundreds of kilometers above are probably not the domain lords. They are definitely the beings at the top of the star. There are no such strong people among them. This mission is kept secret from them, so they also I don't know if I have to face such a terrifying existence and take action. Fortunately, the other party left quietly by himself, otherwise their lives would have been in danger. This is not their fault, it is really because the other party is too unique. How could they have expected that the other party would dare to jump from an altitude of hundreds of kilometers? As for the next step, whether the forces behind them refuse to give up or give up pursuit is all the organization's business and has nothing to do with them. Hey, it's quite fun up there. In the sky, the little fish being carried by Jia Yan was still reluctant to leave. It may seem like an ordinary spaceship trip, but it may be the most interesting few days for Xiao Yu after arriving at Nanjing Star. Most of the passengers on the ship are of high quality, and they are all smiling and friendly even when they are having fun. This environment, coupled with the quality of the characters, makes the spaceship journey more dreamy from a child's perspective. It's a pity that dreams always have to be awakened. Xiao Yu, my sister will take you to create a world to play in the future. It will be more fun. Atisha quickly comforted Xiao Yu. Oh, is it the creative world with Sister Xiaolin? Yes, that Sister Xiaolin is also very nice. You two will definitely become good friends. Okay, I want to become good friends with Miss Xiaolin, Baba Baba. A large number of colorful bubbles flew out of the sky, making the few of them flying here become an important part of the beautiful scenery. It's a pity that no one appreciates it. Sir, after we land at this predetermined location, we will then walk along this mountain, forest, and waterway. About 20 kilometers ahead, there is a small town. If we put flying tools on it, we will soon reach the location of the ruins. The giant bear calmly pointed the way forward for Jia Yan. At the same time, his heart was different from the calm on the surface, but a little turbulent. This lord is truly unfathomably powerful. In the southern giant star, it is difficult for ordinary creatures to fly. Even for a mid-level star like him, flying is not impossible, but it will consume a lot of energy, and after flying a certain distance, you have to land and rest for a while. Lord Jia Yan was flying with the three of them, looking relaxed and content. This chapter is not finished, click next page to continue reading --U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. Is this the strength of the Mighty One? Under Jia Yan's coercion, the four of them flew directly to a small town 20 kilometers away. Compared with those big cities, the style of small towns is completely different. There seem to be some buildings and shops, but they are more indifferent and wary towards outsiders. Many locals are staring at Jia Yan and the others, as if they have not seen them for a long time. It's like seeing an outsider. We want to buy flying equipment. Over there, the prices are all posted. Is this really true? Is this second-hand product more expensive than the brand new one outside? You don't have to buy it if it's expensive. Guest, do you know how difficult it is for us to transport it here? Then, okay, I'll buy this one. When the giant bear was extremely distressed, he bought a flying vehicle that was far less beautiful and heroic than before. At least I can ride normally, which is good. When Jia Yan got on the second-hand spaceship, which had only 3 rows and he occupied even 1 row, he even comforted the giant bear. Well, thank you for your understanding, sir. My private property is indeed about to bottom out. The giant bear scratched his head in embarrassment. Naturally, his family property is not much. As a hiker, It seems risky, but in fact, it is still a few levels behind the existence of a real combat profession. The layout and travel budget in recent days have caused him to bleed a lot. There are not too many savings left. Without further ado, these four people with different body shapes and age groups got on the spaceship. Then the spacecraft started and slowly traveled on the road in the town. Finally, after leaving the gate of the town, it suddenly lifted up. He reached a height and plunged into the endless tall jungle. Most of the villagers in the town who were watching the departing spaceship indifferently behind the scenes were still indifferent. The shop owner who had just sold the spaceship waited for a long time after Jia Yan and others left before picking up a communicator. The person you want us to pay attention to has come to our place just now. Don't worry, I have sent someone to track him down. Thank you for the compliment, I will work hard. Probably no one would have thought that there would be so-called spies in this border town. You must know that there are countless similar small towns and villages hidden in the vast sea of trees in southern Star. But now that their location has been detected, Jia Yan and others have no need to retreat at all. He is just afraid of trouble, rather than giving in to trouble. When soldiers come, the water will be blocked and the earth will cover it up. Jia Yan's strength is the guarantee for everything. Sir, we will trek through the jungle for about 5 days. After 5 days, we will reach the ruins. Let you lead the way. Jia Yan was non-committal. Although he could use the subspace method to lead everyone there, the subspace traveling skills in Superstar would also consume a lot of Jia Yan's mental energy. Instead of rushing there and spending a few days to recover his energy, it would be better to by walking slowly like this, he could keep himself in peak condition. This chapter is not finished, click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. Whoa! A giant python emerged from the jungle and almost bit the little fish. Good or bad snake, I'll beat you to death. The little fish was so angry that he used his fins to hit the giant python one by one. The fins, which seemed completely out of proportion to the opponent's 4 to 5 meter stature, actually beat the opponent's skin to pieces, and soon he burrowed dejectedly into the depths of the jungle, saying that he would never dare to fight this little tigress again. Xiao you are so awesome. Atisha praised the other party, and the little fish burst out bubbles, feeling proud. Jia Yan did not hesitate to praise her. Your Excellency is very kind to these two young ladies. I also have children. If I had taught them as well as you did, I probably wouldn't have reached this point in my life. What's wrong? Jia Yan was a little suspicious. After Zhu Xiong talked about it, Jia Yan realized that Zhu Xiong's family was very complicated. His wife was a distant relative of his family, and his 2 sons were strangers to his father and despised his career. However, even if he no longer knows how to educate, he is still a top passerby. His children sometimes disobey, which is actually completely correct. In the end, after he had conflicts with the children several times, one of his sons fell into the trap of him and his enemies. In the disputes between the two, he eventually died tragically at the hands of his enemies. Since then, he has been greatly separated from his youngest son and wife, and they have rarely seen each other for several years. Alas, every family has its own scriptures that are difficult to recite. Jia Yan didn't know how to comfort him, because his own family and life were also very complicated in a sense. Unable to find any reason to comfort themselves, the 2 grown men sighed a few times and started walking silently. In life, who doesn't live a smooth life, but that is not the life of ordinary people. You 2 ladies, you have to be careful. There are not only snakes and pythons in this jungle, but also some more powerful ferocious beasts. Know it? Under the reminder of the giant bear, Atisha and Xiao Yu agreed without thinking too much. Jia Yan didn't think too much. Even if Atisha and the others had some risks that they couldn't solve by themselves, if he took action, the risk would not be too great. Ah! And just a few hours after they drove deeper into the mountain forest, Edisha was so happy and sad that she was slapped on the body by a monster that looked like it had a crocodile head but actually had a cat-like body. She broke several trees with a loud bang and fell to the ground whimpering a few times. Jia Yan was slightly surprised. When the crocodile-headed monster appeared, even Jia Yan was startled. If he hadn't felt the opponent's aura and found out that it was attacking Edenza, Jia Yan wouldn't have been able to help but take action. Little Yu didn't know where she got so much confidence, so she charged forward. The crocodile was caught off guard and got close to her, and then each small fin slapped on the body of the crocodile creature, sending out a golden and iron sound. The sound of singing. So strong. The giant bear approached the crocodile creature from behind, and the typical characteristics of the superstar were clearly revealed. He did not yet know the specific strength of the crocodile creature. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. It's about astral level. You try your best to win it. Let me see the strength of Coaster. Yes, sir. The giant bear became solemn, stopped all those complicated thoughts, rushed directly towards the crocodile creature, and started a life and death struggle with it. Xiao Yuer, who originally wanted to assist at the side, was glared at by the giant bear. She was so frightened that she stepped back. Seeing the flat little mouth, she was about to cry. Don't be afraid, Xiao Yuer, a real strong person is like this. You must have this kind of aura in the future, otherwise you are not a real strong person. At some point, Edisha wiped the blood from her mouth and came to Xiao Yuer's side. Edisha, are you okay? Jia Yan's voice came. Edisha laughed and said, of course it's okay. I was guarding my vitals at the last moment. It looked dangerous, but it wasn't that dangerous at all. That's good. Jia Yan nodded assuredly. Chapter 21. Every family has sutras that are difficult to recite. Come to Cheateon.com to subscribe. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Buletin Yu. Chapter 3019. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. This is the case with Edisha. Her terrifying rationality and calculation power also play a role in times of danger. They can often make the battle more tilted toward Edisha and the danger away from her. As for her crazy appearance, Jia Yan believes that everything is disguised. Of course, disguise is not necessarily true. In short, she must have the confidence to have everything under control, otherwise she will never do many things. While the giant bear was talking, it had been fighting with the crocodile creature for about 5 minutes. Jia Yan couldn't stand it anymore, so he used his brainwave power to suppress it. The giant bear looked at Jia Yan with a strange expression, and then stopped talking. Crocodile creature kills with one claw. If there are similar monsters in the future, and you go up to fight them, I will help you wait. Yes. As a coaster, giant bears actually have some rules, or some kind of inheritance among coasters, that is, when encountering forest monsters of similar strength, they will try their best to fight to the death with each other single-handedly. If they die, it was a coaster. No matter how angry his companions were, no one would retaliate against the monster. Firstly, there was danger, and secondly, the death of the coaster in the hands of an enemy of the same level had already humiliated the coaster. The name, and the third reason, is that there are beings in the jungle who can cultivate to the strength of strangers. It is difficult to say whether they are intelligent beings. Even if some are not intelligent beings, they are not far away from intelligent beings. If people have obtained normal identification information, and they can take action at will, which is to attack and kill certain forces or residents of small towns. Similar incidents happen from time to time. It sounds ridiculous, but there are often passers-by because of this. This kind of punishment may be an excuse for some forces to be thrown into jail or directly killed. Of course, the bigger reason is that the coaster also needs to be tempered by fighting. Just now Jia Yan took action directly. The giant bear finally encountered a monster with a similar strength. If he fights for a while, his strength may be better. They all had the opportunity to make further progress, but unfortunately they were interrupted by Jia Yan. It was hard for him to say anything. The march continues. And just as Jia Yan and the others entered the depths of the jungle, above the small town on the outskirts of the jungle, a helicopter-like metal object flew to this area. "Sir, I welcome your arrival. The information I reported earlier." The clerk who had been bossing around Jia Yan and others before was now extremely respectful. "No need to say anything, just take me directly to where they left." "Yes." The clerk was frightened and quickly led the people who got off the helicopter to the location where Jia Yan and the others left in the car. But not long after, they found the vehicle they had just sold parked in front of a dead-end road 200 kilometers away from the town. Judging from the traces, they should have entered the jungle. "This, sir, do you want to take a helicopter to chase me? Otherwise, it would not be a good thing to enter this mountain forest. Many old people here say that the beasts in this area are much stronger than in other places. Many old hunters are afraid to enter. It doesn't matter, what kind of beast can stop me?" The visitor smiled, stood up, and led several subordinates into the depths of the jungle. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading /U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. The clerk thought for a moment and stepped back. As a local, he was more in awe of this jungle. According to the older generation, there was a terrifying monster like a crocodile in this jungle, which had even swallowed up the stellar mountain climbers who came to use it. Guessed. Of course, he had no idea that the legendary crocodile he feared had turned into a corpse at this moment, being eaten by many weak creatures that he had bullied in the depths of the jungle. Be careful, this mountain forest is indeed different from other places. On the other side, the strong man who had just entered the depths of the jungle gave instructions to his subordinates. Yes. Those subordinates took out their weapons one by one, and their evil intentions appeared. It is obvious that none of these beings are weak, and they will not be afraid of the jungle that the residents of this small town are afraid of. After all, their status makes it impossible for them to be afraid of such a place. Someone is chasing me. At the same time, just in front of the route pursued by the group of strong men, little Edisha was stunned for a moment, and then started shouting loudly. "Oh! Is there anyone who can follow me until I get here? Those people have great powers." When Jia Yan heard this, he was slightly startled, and then he laughed indifferently. "Ignore them and let them chase, as long as it doesn't affect our progress." "Then what if they come to influence us?" Edisha asked in agreement. "Then send them to hell," Jia Yan said calmly. The giant bear's scalp felt numb after hearing this. Although he is afraid of the chasing forces, this does not mean that he is no longer afraid of the strong man who protects him. On the contrary, his fear of this strong man may still be among the forces. Superior. Admittedly, he knew very well that the forces chasing him had many fake powers, and there was only one real power in front of him. But even he could vaguely sense that the gap between true and false powers was like a chasm. Besides, putting aside his strength, was Jia Yan really as kind as he showed? How many people who can achieve true power grew up in a kind way? Who is not one general who achieves great success and withers away thousands of bones? Only two little kids here can make Jia Yan so gentle. The giant trees in the sky seem to be similar to other places, but according to Jia Yan's giant mosquito eye observation, the height of the giant trees here is on average dozens of meters higher than those in the mountains and forests he has walked through before. In other words, the towering ancient trees in other ordinary mountains and forests are 150 or 60 meters high, but the ones here are almost 200 meters high. It can be said that there is a huge gap. The mountains and forests here were actually similar to other places hundreds of years ago, and the level of danger was not much higher. It was not until the arrival of that existence that it became what it is now. Last time I met with my friends I was aware of the strange situation here and was keenly aware of the situation here, so I approached here. Unfortunately, I was the only one left to escape, alas. Jia Yan looked at the sighing giant bear and thought to himself that he was the only one who escaped. I'm afraid the real story, whether it was his friends who allowed him to live, the real answer will definitely shock everyone. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading --U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the starry sky giant mosquito. But this is the matter of the giant bear. Besides, it is normal for people to do whatever they do when they are in danger. Even Jia Yan, if he really faced a life and death crisis, he would probably give anything in exchange for survival. Chance. What's more, they are still some so-called friends in the same industry. In this day, they walked more than 100 kilometers. It didn't seem that far, but with their children and trekking through deep mountains and forests, the speed was actually not too slow. At night, the giant bear built a small treehouse that stood proudly between two trees. The strength of the strong is so useful, even in such deep mountains and old forests. Whatever cabin they want to build is just a random one thing. Moreover, the furniture in the cabin can be said to be all-inclusive. Even the room where Edisha and Xiaoyu lived together were filled with wooden toys. However, it was a pity that his attentive move, but did not achieve much effect, because Jia Yan directly took out the toys and snacks that the two little guys liked from the subspace, and also gave them the quilts and other things they were accustomed to using. I hope these guys won't be ignorant today. No matter how fast they walked, they could never outstrip the pursuing professional team behind them. Jia Yan had already vaguely noticed that there were ghostly eyes following behind them. But he didn't alert the enemy. The people who come here are likely to be fake powerful people, and as time goes by, this fake powerful person may change from one person to several. However, Jia Yan did not take action, and the reason was very simple. Taking action now would only intensify the conflict, and it would be difficult to solve the subsequent troubles. Moreover, even if there was any reason to take action, Jia Yan would endure it for the time being. He has already thought of how to use these people. Are you pretending to be powerful? After the last test, I already have a rough idea of the so-called strength level of the fake Great Master. I have nothing to be afraid of. The fake powerful person is said to be powerful, but actually from Jia Yan's point of view, he is still the peak existence of a senior domain master. He had also spent some time at the top of the senior territory lord, so he was quite familiar with this level. It seems to be scary, and it seems that there is only a slight distance from the lower level of the territory lord, but the contrast between the strength of the two sides may be far further than they imagined. The previous elder in the cloak allowed Jia Yan to see the strength of the so-called fake powerful being on the southern superstar, and he also measured the comparison between his own strength and the opponent's strength. Let's put it this way, if I let go of the fight and a group of 30 or 50 fake powerful men come, I'm afraid they won't be able to pose much of a threat to me. Well, this is without using the subspace ability. If I use the subspace... Jia Yan shook his head. After testing the waters last time, he found out that the so-called fake great power was not an extremely troublesome opponent for him, even if he was not a bastard. This southern star cultivator seems to have other differences besides being powerful. Jia Yan thought for a moment, then stopped thinking so much for the time being and continued to move forward with the giant bear. You two little ones, there might be some scary existences on the road ahead, so don't go in any further. This chapter is not finished, click next page to continue reading U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. Yes. Okay. The two little girls smiled happily, but stopped chasing and followed Jia Yan obediently. The giant bear was having some random thoughts at this time. Now that he knew someone was chasing him, he couldn't help but think too much. Another 2 days passed, and they were getting closer and closer to the so-called ruins of the Mighty One. Jia Yan, on the other hand, chatted with Giant Bear from time to time in the past 2 days, and through insinuations, he gradually understood what the strange feeling he felt from the powerful southern star gave him. Very simple. Its lifespan. From the calm words of the giant bear, he found out that the longevity of the strong man described by the other party was actually twice as short as that outside, and even several times shorter for some short-lived races. After learning the news, Jia Yan was also a little unbelievable. The life and powerful civilization above the southern giant has overwhelmed the entire galaxy. At least as far as Jia Yan sees it now, he can't imagine where it can be stronger than the southern giant, but how can they have such huge flaws? I think I know why. And on the last day, when Jia Yan was walking at the front of the crowd and thoughtfully opening the way, he suddenly had an enlightenment. Become stronger quickly, and the possibility of becoming stronger is greater, and it will not be for no reason and at no cost. Moreover, the life of the southern superstar is like the endless stars in the sky. The possibility of giving birth to powerful creatures is quite high, and the resources are extremely abundant. This also leads to their entire process of becoming stronger, which is almost in a state of strengthening through eating in different senses. Whether it is eating by mouth in the physical sense, or eating by plundering resources, or eating by civilization by gathering sand into towers, in short, they have always had energy poured into their bodies. No matter which method, it means that their biological functions have always been stable. It is in a state of evolution, and this state, from a biological perspective, is extremely fast metabolism. Creatures with fast metabolisms on the earth, such as rats, rabbits, insects, etc., often pay the price of extremely short lifespans, and this theory is also true for strong creatures. No wonder success or failure is a failure. The overall lifespan of the entire southern giant is extremely short. This is the direction of their evolution. The excessive way to become stronger has led to their faster metabolism, which has affected their lifespan, but in exchange for the collective strength is extremely powerful. It's not worth it. Those weak civilizations must be able to exchange for flowers like the southern superstar at the cost of their lifespan. They would agree without hesitation, but they can't do it. Jia Yan looked back calmly. After they approached the ruins, the little tails following them swaggered close to within 300 to 500 meters, as if they didn't mind being noticed by Jia Yan and the others. Grown-ups. Don't pay attention to them. After Jia Yan gave the order, the giant bear's inner uneasiness finally relaxed. Jia Yan calmly observed the scenery behind him. The powerful characters who followed behind them formed a battle formation. Unknowingly, the number of people was no longer the number initially perceived, but now reached 30 or 40 people. This chapter is not finished. Click next page to continue reading U003E/U003E. Rebirth of the Starry Sky Giant Mosquito. The aura of life in it was strong, existing like a little sun that was in constant panic, and it seemed to occupy about 4 or 5 people. Probably these 4 or 5 people gave them the confidence to show up openly. I'm afraid that the numerical gap between the fake powers and the real powers in this southern superstar makes them not have much knowledge of the real powers. The ratio of false to true power of 1000 to 1 is quite exaggerated for Jia Yan. Moreover, among those thousands of fake powers, I am afraid there will be no shortage of those who have reached the peak of fake powers and claim to be true powers. This will also cause other fake powers to misunderstand true powers. The reason for the judgment. Chapter 22. The longevity issue. Come to Cheateon.com to subscribe. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3020. Behind. The big two and the small have slowed down. Maybe their goal is right in front of them. Last time, it was rumored that the team that killed the giant bear blocked them nearby, but they never found the so-called ruins. It will probably not take too long to find the ruins. By then. Don't worry for now. The other party has already noticed us and still dares to be so calm. He must be relying on something. Reliance. Under such a large number of people? Could it be that you are just trying to keep calm? I told you not to worry. If you don't listen, you can go up and try it yourself. We are very willing to let you explore that person's strength. Hey, please forgive me for not having the interest to die. A gentleman would not stand behind a dangerous wall. Everyone chatted and found out that there was probably no affiliation or superior-subordinate relationship between the powerful men, and there was also a small gap. It's just that Jia Yan and others are hundreds of meters away, and even Jia Yan can't hear the brainwave sound transmission here. However, this does not prevent Jia Yan from putting some energy into the pursuers here. Although he is confident in his own strength, it does not mean that he will despise these fake powers. The giant bear was already trembling, a little frightened. How could he have been targeted by so many tyrannical auras in his entire life? The existence of fake powers, even if they are not at the lower level of the territory lord, but their aura, as long as they are not hidden, can be released in the southern star. They can simply threaten the middle level of the star a few hundred meters away, at least not like Edisha and Xiaoyuer, they can't even feel it. So ignorance is bliss. Seeing the two little girls bouncing around as usual, the giant bear felt a little envious of them. Sir, we are almost there, right at the foot of the mountain in front of us, but, are you sure you are going to walk over in such a grand manner? Do you want to find a way to divert the group of people behind you away? Jia Yan looked at the giant bear and then at the foot of the mountain he showed. There is a pool there, which is a small lake that is very rare in the South Star. There are aquatic vegetation growing on the lake surface, and the colorful flowers in bloom are dazzling and beautiful. No, you can just lead us there. Jia Yan said calmly. The giant bear took a deep breath, nodded, and without saying anything else, directly led Jia Yan and the others into the lake. They are approaching the lake. Could it be that, the so-called ruins are right there in the lake? No wonder, we have searched for so many teams, but we still can't find the entrance to the ruins. It's actually in the lake. Not necessarily. It might be underground. It's better to be calm and let them open the entrance first. Yes, it's possible that they are trying to deceive others. The noise behind him gradually grew louder. However, Jia Yan and others were unmoved and approached the lake. On the blue lake, the blue color of the sky is reflected. This kind of pure blue, which is bluer than the sky of the earth, is very dazzling and confusing. Sir, if you want to enter the ruins, you need to pull the third water flower, and then pull the 21157611 in sequence, and finally pull the third water flower repeatedly, and the ruins will appear on their own. Jia Yan looked at the giant bear strangely. That great man who died must be a gamer, right? Did he do this? But he didn't say anything, nodded, secretly took half a step back, and led Edisha and the two children. Go ahead and pull it out. The giant bear's pupils shrank, he looked back at Jia Yan, and suddenly realized what he was doing. What he said was, would such a top powerhouse easily believe in a being like him who he just met? Impossible, so along the way, Jia Yan's attitude towards the giant bear was extremely strange. In fact, this was an expression of not trusting the giant bear. He smiled at himself, said nothing, nodded, and flew to the lake and sky, and gently touched the flowers on the lake in the order he said. It seems to be a flower of life, but when you touch it, a rather strange artistic conception arises. It looks like life, but it also has a feeling of non-life. It may be that some existence has blocked the life and turned it into a flower. The feeling of being part of the institution. Jia Yan's eyes were also a little surprised. The great power in the southern star is indeed unfathomable in strength. The same was true for the giant tree we bumped into earlier, and this powerful man who was rumored to be dead had an ability that even Jia Yan could hardly understand. As the sequence unfolded one by one, those strange auras became more intense. Boom boom boom. The earth cracked, and the water above the lake automatically separated to both sides. This lake is not too big, but it is about 1 kilometer in diameter. At this time, it is directly divided into two halves, revealing a dark entrance below. There are also some carvings full of totems around it, making it look eerie. Forest feeling. The giant bear flew back to Jia Yan and said nervously and solemnly, "Sir, the entrance has been opened." Jia Yan looked at him, nodded calmly, and then looked behind him. The group of strong men behind them, as soon as the entrance was revealed under the control of the giant bear, they all became excited and quickly approached here. "You guys, you have a share in seeing it. How about we explore this ruins together?" One of the strong men had a false smile on his face, and he clasped his paws directly at Jia Yan, as if he was very polite. Adisha jumped out very unhappy, pointed at his nose and cursed, "No, why? You didn't contribute to the relics we found, so why should we share them with you? Little girl, what you said is wrong. We have been waiting behind you to help you clear away many terrifying creatures that are following you. If not, do you think you would have been able to get here smoothly?" Another strong man spoke up. Following his words, Edisha looked behind the crowd and saw a few people behind who were responsible for carrying supplies. They were carrying many beast-like creatures. They all looked very powerful. However, Adisha would not be deceived by their excuses. "What the hell, even if you don't do anything, we can still solve it. You have followed us and dealt with a few monsters, and you want to share the ruins with us. It's just nonsense. We won't let you in." "That's right, we won't let you in, Xiao is here to block it." Bah, bah, bah. The little fish swam out, looking extremely ferocious, spitting out colorful bubbles from time to time, but Jia Yan keenly discovered that many of the bubbles spit out by this little guy actually had positive and negative attributes. It's interesting. These days, Edisha seems to be teaching Xiao Yu the techniques of using yin and yang dao, especially the principles of explosives. It just so happens that Xiao Yu is not only talented in subdimensional space, but also has yin-yang dao talent that Jia Yan has never seen before. Fast. Of course, she can't get involved in the current battle, let's leave it to the future to see if she can shine. "Two brats, your words don't count. Let the senior behind you speak. Or do you think your words can represent that senior?" Someone laughed sarcastically. Jia Yangjing Buobo's words sounded, and they didn't sound like he was angry after being provoked by a weakling. On the contrary, they sounded like a breath of fresh air. What the two of them said is exactly what I want. If you cherish your life, it is better to retreat as soon as possible, otherwise you will be responsible for the consequences. The group of followers were startled. They originally believed that the two little brats who disrupted the situation were Jia Yan's deliberately arranged buffers for both sides. If they had anything to do, they could talk to the two brats first, and maybe they wouldn't have to confront Zhen Deneng again. Of course, that also shows that the truly powerful person is afraid of this group of people. But unexpectedly, they had gradually accepted the two sides to continue negotiations, and then drafted a contract on how to divide the wealth into the ruins. At this time, the powerful man spoke. "Senior, what you're saying is that you support their statement. We have no choice but to leave or have to fight with you before we can enter the exploration." Not bad, Jia Yan said concisely. Everyone over there, look at me and I look at you, all of them have sinister expressions on their faces, as if they are still using the power of brainwaves to talk. As long as they are willing, even Jia Yan can steal the conversation of the fake powerful person. Can't hear it? However, Jia Yan never thought of eavesdropping on their conversation. He just needed to know what the other party was planning to do. After a while, in front of the lake that was divided into two halves, a fake powerful man took the lead, took a step forward, and said with an uncomfortable expression, "Senior, we know that you are a truly powerful person who is respected by others, so we call you Senior to show our respect. However, if Senior wants to occupy this ruins alone, please forgive me for not being able to accept your tyranny." Jia Yan finally smiled a little and asked, "Oh, if you don't want to accept my tyranny, what do you want to do? I'm tired of waiting, and I want to ask my senior for advice. If my senior's strength is far superior to mine, then we will naturally flee far away and no longer hinder senior and others from exploring the ruins." Jia Yan was uncertain for a long time. Just when the people on the other side thought that this truly powerful man was probably weighing the pros and cons and not wanting to fight with so many of them, Jia Yan, who was standing proudly by the lake in front of him, wrote lightly, "Then come on." After saying this, Jia Yan said nothing more. At the moment when his words came out astonishingly, his figure disappeared from the place. Careful. At the same time, behind the active speaker, other fake powerful creatures emerged, charging in front of the speaker's body, raising a pair of big knives and blocking them in front of him. Puff! The creature holding the knife and the speaker were knocked away by the sudden appearance of the figure, and both of them spurted a mouthful of blood in the air. Arms. Jia Yan glanced at the weapon that served as his strong man, his eyes a little curious. In his life of more than 100 years, he has experienced countless battles, but he saw no more than 5 fingers of strong men from the universe using weapons. He did not expect to see other people in this southern star. Among the strong men in the rear, there seemed to be quite a few who were carrying weapons. The southern superstar is really different. Even the northern superstar has few people who are good at using weapons. Jia Yan nodded, used a weapon against the opponent, and blocked his own random blow without any surprise. Is it surprising that two fake powerful beings can withstand their own casual blows when using weapons? It's not surprising at all, and besides, the strength he used was only 10% to 20%. True power exists, but it's nothing more than that. After the two fake powerful men flew out upside down, their eyes suddenly became more vicious. The fact that they were injured by one blow was not unexpected, but was expected. In serious cases, they think they may be fatally hit, and then they will have no choice but to beg for mercy. Nowadays, they are only injured but not even seriously injured, which shows that if everyone swarms up, it is still very possible to compete with the real power. Superior. Groups of powerful creatures behind them swarmed forward one by one, full of confidence. However, in Jia Yan's eyes, they are just a group of feeble-minded digging their own graves. The giant bear gnashed its teeth for a moment at the edge of the battlefield, then roared suddenly. The hair on its body swelled, as if it had turned into a furball bear. It rushed straight to the battlefield, found 2 star-level experts, and fought with them. In an instant, extremely intense. Adisha wants to be beaten too. Adisha's feet were stepping on the yin and yang paths, one on the left and one on the right. When her 2 immature little toes touched the ground, a considerable reaction force burst out, and the speed was so fast that no one else had expected it. She also dragged a star-level fighter into a fight, using certain fighting techniques from time to time. She looked like she was only at the semi-star level, but she was busy fighting with a star-level warrior, making others look at her. Little fish. Well, she was also eager to give it a try, but she always felt that there was a force blocking her from entering the battle circle. Some stars who wanted to get close to her were also blocked by this mysterious force, making it impossible for them to get close. It was exactly what Jia Yan did. There are too many remarkable places in the entire battle circle, but the most prominent place is naturally the main battlefield where the powerfuls fight. The four fake powerful men quickly approached Jia Yan and turned into a battle circle. They surrounded Jia Yan, trying to eat away at his defense power step by step, eventually causing Jia Yan to be injured or have to flee. They have regarded a true mighty as very important. But the lack of understanding of true power caused them to make extremely serious misjudgments. Guys, you are really brave. Do you know what level we and other visitors from outside the land call you, and what level I am at? Huh, no need for nice words. Yes, if Senior is capable, he can defeat us all. If you want to sway us with words, it's better not to have such hope. Exactly, although we are not those who have fought 100 battles, we have also experienced many conflicts. If you want to intensify our hearts, it is really useless and we have underestimated you. Jia Yan said his words sincerely, but unexpectedly, these fake powerful people were all filled with indignation, as if Jia Yan was really using his words to incite them. This made Jia Yan dumbfounded. Since these guys don't appreciate it, Jia Yan will show a little ability. Ding. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3021. A foot that bloomed with a hint of blue collided with the being holding the weapon. The other person was shaken violently, and then staggered back a few steps. Before he could react, one of the feet had already penetrated his shoulder blades. Ah! Before anyone had time to react, this person who was holding a weapon and should have the strongest defense and attack power was the first to scream. Puff! Jia Yan pulled out his foot and brought up a pile of monster's blood. Tisk tisk, the weapon system of this southern star is quite impressive. After receiving my blow, only such a small dent was left. Jia Yan picked up the weapon that the opponent had thrown away. It looked like a double-edged sword. He didn't know how it was made. His blow left only a shallow mark. It's a pity that for Jia Yan, it's just something that interests him, far from being exciting. He has become accustomed to not using weapons. Moreover, this weapon is really just some kind of metal. It is definitely expensive, but it is not the kind that will bring out superstars as the master grows bigger. If he is tempted, he will bring out superstars in the future. It's just a small toy countless times smaller than a toothpick, and it's completely useless. Throw away this double-edged sword. Clang. The double-edged sword was thrown into the hands of the bewildered strong man, and he was just able to pick it up. But he had lost his will to fight and had no time to pick up the sword. He couldn't understand that he couldn't even take a single blow from the opponent when he used the precious weapon he had saved up for half his life. You must know that among the strong men in Southern Star, if they have weapons, their strength can be increased by 20 to 30% out of thin air. But it was under such circumstances that he was injured lightly by the opponent. After a while, Jia Yan's figure flickered again in the circle surrounded by fake powerful people, and only the sound of clanging could be heard. Not long after, these guys were injured one by one. They stumbled, sat half-sitting, or fell to the ground. There was only violent noise. The ability to breathe. The giant bear on the other side was fighting fiercely with the two stellar powerhouses. Edisha suppressed her opponent. The little fish who couldn't move easily found another way, spitting out bubbles with positive and negative explosive power. When Edisha was entangled with her opponent, a boom exploded on the opponent's body, causing the opponent to tremble with fright, giving Edisha an opportunity to injure her with a small fist. Yeah. The little girls rejoiced. The remaining helpers were all less than star level in strength. Rather than coming to help in the fight, they were more likely to come to carry supplies or open roads. Each one of them was silent, stunned by the scene in front of them of a small number of people beating many people. Moreover, the side with more people being beaten was actually the force they belonged to. Now, they were on pins and needles. They're all pretty good. Jia Yan's voice rang out, letting Edisha and Giant Bear understand that Jia Yan also had an advantage. Several fake powers have no attack ability, or even if they have it, they still recognize the reality. They are all powerful people. The distance between the so-called fake powerful people and the real powerful people is probably a bit big, and it is not an exaggeration to say that there is a huge chasm between them. How is it? Now you all know how big the essential gap is between you, the top senior domain lords, and a lower level domain lord. Senior domain lord. Rear level of domain lord. What a distant and ancient term, haha, actually we understand it, but this group of fake powerful men looked at each other with a bit of bitterness. Nan Yuxing is not closed-minded. In fact, they know everything. As senior leaders, they are well aware of the actual division of levels. But as cultivators of the Southern Star, who are widely rumored to be the most powerful and purest people in the entire galaxy, how can they believe the rumors from the outside that there is a huge gap between fake power and real power? There are too many fake great masters on South Star. There are so many fake great masters. After all, they have never had a good conversation with the real great masters in their lives. In other words, countless fake great masters live in their own little land. Go through life with an attitude of supreme confidence. This has also created a large number of confident fake powers who think they can compete with real powers. Several of their fake powers have joined forces, and it has been settled. Some of the fake powers really dare to fight against the real powers alone, but they will end up. Senior, I have surrendered. I'll kill or behead you. It's up to you to do whatever you want. A fake great man gave a wry smile, stood up and clasped his fists, then looked resigned. In fact, he is also considered a keen person. It can be seen from Jia Yan's attitude just now that Jia Yan seems not to want to kill them. After all, if Zhen De Neng was so powerful, he would have had the opportunity to kill them anytime and anywhere for so many days even if he knew they were following them, but Jia Yan let them chase him to this ruins. Yes, I have something for you to do. Jia Yan pointed to the ruins in front of him with a teachable expression. Now you wait for someone to be dispatched and let me enter the inside of the gate. The other party was slightly stunned. The giant bear in the distance was also startled, and soon his mind changed and he figured out these key points. He also became bitter. This reason is too simple. In fact, Jia Yan probably didn't trust his giant bear too much. He was afraid that the giant bear would lead him here to trap the trap. Therefore, when the giant bear asked Jia Yan how to deal with the pursuers behind him, Jia Yan was non-committal. Let it be, it turned out that I had already made up my mind to let these guys go explore the road first. Yes, sir, let's send a few half-stars into it first. It doesn't take a few people, just come one by one. Jia Yan said. Yes, then there is one person, Zhu Iron, come on. Me? Okay. The half-star powerhouses known as the Iron Accumulators seemed to have been watching the show just now. They were half-stars and really couldn't get involved in the battle just now. They thought they could just sit back and watch the victory or defeat, but they didn't expect that as soon as the strong men turned their heads, heaven's punishment would fall on them. The man sighed and looked at the plants in the water with some fear, and then at the wide open cave. Go ahead. Yes. He had no choice but to take off and enter the cave. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Inside the cave, several shaking and vibrations soon came, but there was no smell of death. Probably not dead, let's go to another one. Jia Yan said calmly. Li Gong, go. Yes. Another half-star stood up, but before that, he was stopped by Jia Yan. Go to a stellar level. Then Zioki, you go. Yes. The person called Zioki was a star, and he was at the pinnacle of the middle-level star. He almost killed the giant bear just now. He entered the cave at the bottom of the lake, and the ground shook again, and soon the movement disappeared again. Senior. The other fake powerful men looked at Jia Yan. Next, a fake great master will enter. I hope you can understand clearly that even if there are any treasures in it, you cannot compete with me if you take them. The so-called owner of this ruins, even if he is alive, is at most half the same as me. A fake powerful man who was not too seriously injured nodded, sighed, and flew into the cave. This time the vibration was more severe than before. But as before, there was no feeling of loss of life, the shaking disappeared, and even the breath of fighting was not revealed. I am afraid there was no appearance of fighting or danger in it. Jia Yan looked at the giant bear and said, "You go in next. You have gone in once. I hope you can take care of yourself and don't do anything. I will give you whatever you want." The giant bear was trembling and hurriedly held his paws in his hands. He smiled at Edisha and Xiao Yuer, turned into an expanded bear shadow, and threw himself into the cave. Jia Yan, the giant mosquito, was like the man behind the scenes who was personable but in control of the overall situation. He silently watched as several people came in, without any serious movement, and finally relaxed his vigilance. "Then you." Jia Yan turned back directly and looked at the other pursuers behind him who were at a loss. "Senior. Senior, although we are following Senior, we have never thought of killing Senior, and we have not even had any intention to kill the people around Senior. It is true that Nangxingxing is really powerful and has a really powerful circle. We, etc. If we dare to touch the idea of a really powerful Senior, regardless of whether we have that ability, even if we have that ability, it will be difficult for us to stay safe in the days to come." The guy who was originally holding a weapon no longer had the reserve of pretending to be powerful, nor did he have any airs. He knelt down and kowtowed. Under his influence, the other two people quickly knelt down and trembled. From now on, if they can survive, whoever hears their subordinates saying that they are really powerful in analogies will definitely slap Suan Kaiu to death, otherwise it will definitely lay the foundation for their disaster. How can such great power be compared to this group of senior domain masters? Haha, the so-called fake powerful people are so strong. No wonder, above the southern superstar, there are so many fake powerful people, the chance of achieving the lower level of territory lord has been reduced. Jia Yan smiled disdainfully. When it comes to promotion chances, at least according to the data that Jia Yan knows now, the possibility of being promoted to the lower level of a domain master by a senior domain lord from the outside world is probably higher than that of the southern star. Of course, he is referring to the central star of the Milky Way. Domain area. As for the further and more remote places, I'm afraid there aren't even many senior territory lords in those places, let alone those in the lower ranks of territory lords, so they can almost be ignored. Jia Yan looked at these guys without showing any trace, and then at Edisha. Edisha immediately understood. She hugged the little fish and let the pink fish pat the fish scales from time to time, shouting, "What's wrong, what's wrong?" Seeing this scene, the group of fake powerful beings suddenly looked panicked. Several stars around them, and some smart people also suddenly noticed something. They said nothing more, used all their strength and soared into the sky. In particular, the three false powerful beings burned all their power at this moment, and the cosmic power was in panic all day long. It was as if there was an extra little sun shining in this area. Several people were divided into several directions, and the lightning shot out. With such force, some people had already jumped out several hundred meters, and a strong excitement arose in their hearts. In Naniastar, the distance from the outside world is not as close as thousands of kilometers away. They escaped a few hundred meters, which is the boundary between life and death. As long as Jia Yan chases one of them, the others will take the opportunity to escape. 10 kilometers away, and then hiding in the deep mountains and old forests, even a really powerful person would have a hard time detecting their whereabouts. Jia Yan's gaze remained unchanged, just looking at the group of escapees from afar. I want to see, I want to see. The little fish behind her was still shouting loudly, but at this moment, Edisha covered her more tightly. Puff. I saw a series of bullet-like objects, large and small, emitting a faint azure color in the subspace, shooting out at a glance. Their rate of fire is extremely difficult to detect with the naked eye. Everyone, in order to repay your cooperation, Jia will let you suffer a little less. While he was talking, a stone had already approached behind a star-level expert who was running away quickly. He saw his soul flying into the sky, desperately trying to speed up and escape from the shooting range of the stone, but the stone actually seemed to have grown longer. Even though he did change his position a little in an instant, the stone still followed behind him like a shadow, and then pierced the star's head. Snapped. The monster's head burst open like paste, exploding into large swaths of red and white matter. Fireworks bloomed in the sky like a rain of blood, which was very bloody. So scary. The other people who were escaping already had a very good understanding of this existence, but they still had a new understanding at this time. With people in panic, they paid more attention to the stones trailing behind them, but there was still an incessant puff sound that resounded through the sky, and the bodies of each strong man were accurately hit, and they were torn apart in the sky. Ah! Even Adisha was startled. The picture is so ugly, no wonder Jia Yan asked her to cover the little fish, otherwise the little guy might be so young and might have left indelible trauma in his heart. Among these escapees, the fastest ones were the three fake powerful men, and two of them used certain methods in a way that Jia Yan was amazed at. They seemed to be escaping, but they seemed to have shrunk to the ground. In a blink of an eye, he reached a distance of about 10 kilometers, which made him look sideways. It's just these ways of escaping. You can never escape the law of the strong. As a true power in the lower level of the domain lord, it is almost impossible for a fake powerhouse to use all kinds of martial arts. Chances of escape. Although Jia Yan is sure that he will not be the best among the lower ranks of territory lords, even if he is like this, he can still deal with some ants. Puff puff. In the sky, blood flowers bloomed from time to time. Soon, those half-star and star-level stars all fell in his hands. Even the fake powerful being who didn't have a strong escape technique was hit on the right shoulder by a blue stone. If he hadn't been so powerful and avoided the vital point at the critical moment, he would have already fallen into the trap of others. Follow in the footsteps. Even so, he was dying and seriously injured. Puff. No. Just when Jia Yan accurately shot another azure stone and penetrated his head, the fake powerful man roared unwillingly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3022. What he was unwilling to accept was not that he failed to kill Jia Yan, but that he regretted why he listened to the slander and came to trouble a true great power. There were so many ancient rumors, all of which showed the difference between false great power and true great power. What a huge difference! I was actually blinded by lard, and I came directly to seek death. After practicing for thousands of years, in the end, a simple mistake made a big mistake and turned it into a handful of lois. Escape. Then Jia Yan turned his attention to the two fake powerful men who had already left 20 kilometers away. The two men found that their friends of the same rank who had escaped more than 10 kilometers had been killed. They suddenly fell silent and fled at a sudden speed. Improved by half. This method of escaping has some tricks. Jia Yan knows that in Nanjing Star, he can despise the weak, but he cannot despise the inheritance of Taoism in the hands of the weak, because the civilization of the strong in Nanjing Star is like the long river that lasts forever. It has lasted for countless generations, and the Taoism of cultivation has it is as vast as the crucian carp crossing the river and is as vast as the sea. Maybe there is the ability to escape from the hands of the lower level of the territory lord. Of course, as far as he could see now, these two were really powerful, but if he had enough energy, they still weren't enough. You two, stay here. Jia Yinshanwei moved his feet again and shot out 20 yin-yang dao stones from his side. These were yin-yang dao explosives, but they were completely different from the original yin-yang dao explosives. At least the stones that were shot no longer had a violent meaning, and had undergone several changes. It seemed that the tracking ability just now was not as simple and crude as it was when he first cultivated the yin and yang dao explosives. Adisha was beside her, her big eyes shining brightly, as if she had learned something again. Jia Yan is actually quite worried. This little guy has terrible computing power and is amazingly talented in yin-yang dao explosives. However, if she is immersed in this dao, it will definitely slow down her cultivation progress. She has no cultivation strength, even if Eddie, what's the point of learning all the yin and yang dao explosive abilities from Jia Yanyi? In the end, it will still be in vain, and he may die if he meets a strong person. Duo. 20 rainbows penetrated the sky and the earth, like electromagnetic cannons, shooting directly at the two fleeing figures. Jia Yan already thought highly of them. He fed them 20 yin-yang Tao explosives, which seemed to have the power of pebbles. In fact, he had found some Bioshu as early as the time of Bioshu. The yin and yang dao explosives created from high-energy objects have a strong mind attached to them. Coming. A fake powerful man with a face as ugly as pig liver. Feeling that the life and death crisis behind him was approaching, he suddenly sank his figure downwards. These yin and yang dao explosives have good tracking capabilities, but he just dodged one of them. It can be said with certainty that this kind of tracking has its limits. However, there were so many people at this time. If he didn't fight hard, he would have no chance of escape. 10 explosives chased the strong man and flew toward the ground. However, when they were about to approach the phantom, the figure of the strong man turned into an afterimage like a blue smoke and gradually disappeared. And go. A few hundred meters in the distance, the figure of this strong man reappeared in the world, and as soon as he appeared, he ran away without looking back. This must be his trump card to escape. This method of escaping from the bottom of the box is really eye-catching. It's a pity that he's not skilled enough in it. Jia Yan nodded in agreement, but said something less optimistic about this person. It's just that the other party ran away and didn't hear. Otherwise, he might have argued with Jia Yan. How could he be so unskilled? Moreover, when they reached the point of pretending to be powerful, they already despised everything. Who would bother to practice the ability to escape? It is rare for him to be able to achieve such a level. Puff. I don't know when a stone had already ambushed in front of his escape path. Not long after it appeared, it suddenly hit the strong man's body, causing his figure to suddenly stop for a moment. The threat posed by the stones was not that exaggerated, but it caused the 10 stones behind him to chase after him. What? Not good. Puff. Puff. The 10 yin-yang dao explosive stones, as if venting the anger of being teased by him before, pierced his body one by one until they fell apart and turned into a mutilated body and fell to the ground. Looking at the other end, the strong man who had fled further had also fallen under the attack of other stones. Tisk, tisk, I told you that I would catch you without any help, and maybe I would end up with a whole corpse. It doesn't look good like this now. Jia Yan shook his head helplessly. There were no more enemy corpses in the sky, and Edisha let go of Xiao Yuer's eyes. Hey, where is the person? Edisha wants to see it. Xiao Yuer was very unhappy, thinking that he had missed a wonderful scene. Xiao, my sister videotaped it for you. I'll show it to you when you get older. Edisha comforted her. Regardless of what the two little girls were saying, Jia Yan walked to the lake that was divided into two halves and observed what was going on inside the lake. Tisk, tisk, it seems like a bit of a chance. Jia Yangui is a junior domain lord, and his strength has been improved by several small levels. He can still feel the violent fluctuations inside the ruins. He felt that the energy of the ruins was not huge enough to cause him fear. At least even if the ruins self-destruct, he would not be much harmed. So he took an elegant step, waved, and took the lead to enter the gate. Atisha quickly led Xiao Yuer to follow. Wow, it's so fun here. Yeah, it's fun. After the two little girls followed Jia Yan into the stone gate, they showed the unique curiosity of children, looking here and touching there. I saw that the inside of this stone gate is indeed a unique cave. It looks like a paradise. There are a lot of rock areas, beautiful scenery, lush greenery, and some butterflies can come and go freely in the mountains and forests. The creation of this cave is truly superb. Jia Yan couldn't help but praise him. This is the cave. In the Southern Superstar, it is possible for a really powerful person to create the so-called strong cave. This is a general concept. In short, it only needs to be simply positioned as the residence of the strong. However, such a residence often has some incredible functions for the strong of other levels, so it is also called cave sky. Jia Yan does not have a cave, or in other words, he wants to build the palace into a cave. This is the opportunity to observe. These butterflies and scenery are all real, but if you have the idea of harming them, they will instantly turn into aggressive and murderous rage and kill you, so be careful. Ah! The little fish was playing with a butterfly. Hearing this, he quickly backed away, fearing it like a tiger. Editha was still fearless. Anyway, she had never thought of harming the creatures in these ruins. The road and gate over there should be the place of opportunity for previous entrants to enter. Jia Yan said to himself, then picked a passage that no one should have entered, and was about to step into it. Your Excellency, as a powerful being like us, you don't need to enter. A voice that sounded like an ethereal sound resounded throughout this small area, making people's hair stand on end. Jia Yan raised his head in surprise and looked around. Just now, he didn't feel the aura of any powerful creature, but the sound was so strange. Could it be that he had met someone who was proficient in hiding and was not weaker than him? But after thinking about it more carefully, he smiled and shook his head. It should not be a living thing, but some kind of semi-program similar to the evolution of the intelligent brain. My friend calls himself mighty, so his strength must be at the lower level of a territory lord, right? Jia Yan smiled and responded. Yes, I am the master of this place, but, I am already a remnant soul attached to the computer. Otherwise, I must come forward in person to discuss the truth with your equal. Jia Yan smiled again and said, since you are a remnant soul, why should you claim to be a powerful person? You are probably just a messenger. The other party obviously did not expect that Jia Yan would not give him face. After being silent for a long time, he finally did not bring up the idea of against Jia Yan, and said lightly, the reason for my appearance is very simple. Since you are a powerful person, the objects in this ruins should not be of value to you, otherwise you will stop mixing with those weak people. It is better to leave the things I left behind to those who are destined to do so. What is a destined person? What is your purpose? Jia Yan did not directly say that what he wanted was not some treasure, but the other party's longevity formula. Destined person, actually, I want to ridicule you. I have lived for countless years. However, at the end of my life, I was shocked to realize that I had not accepted a disciple in my life. It was not something I was willing to take my skills underground. So, you don't actually need to explore anything if you leave this land of inheritance, it's almost all just inheritance. Now that you have clearly seen the existence of your own path, there is nothing that can be used at all. Jia Yan nodded. Indeed, if it is any kind of inheritance, it seems to be of little use to him. However, he still did not turn around and leave. After listening to the other party's words, he said, "That's it, my friend, it's okay if you don't want me to come in, but I want something here, my friend." "What?" "A formula for prolonging life, or some techniques, or some discovery. In short, my friend has lived for so many years, and there will always be your insights and discoveries, even techniques, etc. I only need this thing, other things, I can take nothing. Do you want a secret method to extend your life? With all due respect, your longevity is probably not very short, so why bother looking for techniques to extend your life now? Those are things that we, the only beings with a limited lifespan, can do. Friends don't need to ask for details, just say whether you are willing to give it or not." The faint voice disappeared again for several seconds, seeming to weigh the pros and cons. "That's all. With so many manuscripts and longevity-prolonging treasures that I have compiled, it would be a pity to abandon them. Why not let you take them out and carry them forward? This late territory lord's post level, sounds like the Holy Mother. However, everyone knows that if her character is really like the Virgin Mary's performance, I am afraid that she will not be able to practice the territory lord's post level. In any case, there will be some backup and tricks." Jia Yan just smiled jokingly and allowed the other party to talk for a long time. Then a large number of books and other materials automatically appeared in the space and flew towards Jia Yan. Jia Yan lightly used his brainwave power to catch a few of the books. There was no sneak attack power or anything like that in them, but there were a lot of records and experiments by a certain strong person. "Sir, what do you think? This is the method of prolonging life that I have mastered in my life. Of course, if you need it, I can also give you some waste medicine that I have refined before, but this waste medicine is not oral. Just saying, I will naturally dispose of the ready-made medicine. The waste medicine not only has no effect, but may also become poison, and it will be useless if you take it." Jia Yan collected a book he was reading, and with a wave of his foot, he sent all the books sent by the other party into the subspace. The other party obviously had extremely strong mood swings, and the whole space rippled slightly. After all, this ruined space is under his control. If a lower-level domain lord comes, he will dare to fight in his current remnant soul state. But what came was actually a powerful person with subspace talent, and a powerful being of the same level as when he was alive. This doesn't allow for any crooked thinking. It would be good to be able to preserve one's own heritage. Of course I don't want the so-called waste medicine, but I believe that my friend won't really only have waste medicine, right? Let's make it clear that I really only need something to prolong life. If you are prepared to be stubborn, I'm not stingy with the strength I have, it won't take much effort to smash the entire so-called inheritance of yours." At this moment, the other party fell silent, and there was extremely terrifying energy stirring in the air. But even so, Jia Yan was so free that he didn't even have the thought of worrying about the safety of Editha and the others. Because the energy emitted is really tangible and intangible, the silver gun has a wax head, but it is useless. Even if it breaks out, he is sure to save both Edisha and the others. As for the giant bear that went deep into the depths, it was just a blessing. Fall out. It's good to just fall out, so that you can see how powerful a dead so-called mighty, or former domain lord and lower level being can be. If Jia Yan is not afraid even when he is alive, why should he be afraid of his strength after death? On the other hand, it would be a good thing to increase your knowledge of the methods of truly powerful people. Unfortunately, the other party must not be the kind of being who is easily provoked. After seeing that Jia Yan was not a being that he could intimidate with words, the looming voice smiled faintly. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3023. There was a bit of sarcasm in this smile. Perhaps it was not a sarcasm for Jia Yan, but a sarcasm for himself. He was actually baffled. He felt that being able to persuade a lower-ranking territory lord was a fool's errand. That's all. Since your excellency is so determined, I will no longer hide it and take it. After the strong man finished speaking, a ray of light hit Jia Yan, and Jia Yan naturally caught it on his feet. This is a small bottle. The bottle is crystal clear, beautiful, and quite postmodern aesthetic. This is the last bottle of life-prolonging medicine that I spent my energy to refine before my true body died. It has a life-prolonging effect on almost hundreds of millions of races. You may think that it is not very effective for certain races. However, this universal life-prolonging medicine has you, as a lower-level powerful person, must be aware of the value of this. Having said this, if you still want to destroy the place where my inheritance lies, then go ahead, but I cannot just sit back and wait for death. At this point, Jia Yan also understood that the other party should be really angry, and this was already the limit of the other party. If he continued to force himself, the other party might not hesitate to fight him. Jia Yangjing calmly held back the small bottle, focused his eyes in a certain direction, and chuckled, "Thank you, Your Excellency. By the way, if I don't come in, these two little guys can go in and open their eyes, right? He is not a top master, but if I can pass on your tradition, it would be a good thing. It doesn't matter, just let them in." The voice in the dark answered angrily. Even life-prolonging medicines were given, just to give two little brats a chance to enter, so how could the other side not give it to them? Besides, even if they really got their own inheritance, it might not necessarily be a bad thing. Accompanied by a lower-level territory lord, a little girl who has received her own inheritance will not destroy her own inheritance. Maybe she will carry it forward, or she may abandon that person's inheritance and only practice her own inheritance, which will be better. This is a great thing. The two children looked at Jia Yan, who nodded at them, so Eddie picked up the little fish and entered a randomly selected secret passage together. Under Jia Yan's care, they shouldn't have any big problems, and the other party won't let them get into trouble. After all, Jia Yan will probably demolish the place. "My friend, do you have a physical clone or something like that? If so, why don't you show up and tell me about it? I have some good wines and delicacies here, many of which are from aliens or even from the central star region of the Milky Way." Jia Yan brought out chairs and tables from the subspace, and wine and delicacies flew out. Under the concussion of his brainwave power, these wines and delicacies were automatically heated. They were steaming and smelled refreshing. The fragrance of the human heart. Gudu. From the shadows, a swallowing creature walked out. In fact, Jia Yan had just noticed where the other party was. When the other party approached, Jia Yan also looked at him silently. This should be the clone left behind by the other party after his death. It seems that his strength is quite good. He has the strength of the peak of the star, close to the domain lord level. Unfortunately, Jia Yan knows that the other party will never be promoted. After all, there is no without the true body. It is like losing the soul and staying at this level forever. Sit down. Jia Yan never thought of killing this clone, and it was probably impossible for the opponent to have only one clone. This creature came to Jia Yan, looked at him and shook his head. "I didn't expect that Your Excellency is a person who is greedy for pleasure. If I had been as open-minded as you, I probably wouldn't have so many regrets when I die." Jia Yan laughed. "Why are you greedy for pleasure? You have never seen my friends when I was working hard. This kind of time is also quite rare for me. Eat." Without further ado, Jia Yan turned into a knife and stabbed a bowl of food, then put the food into his mouth and tasted it with relish. "Haha, it tastes really good." The other party was also influenced by Jia Yan, and started to feast on the food, and looked very happy. "Sir, how long have you lived?" Jia Yan didn't talk about important matters and only asked about things that didn't seem to be that important. The opponent's clone looked deeply at Jia Yan, lowered his head and continued to eat, but responded angrily, I can't compare to you outside creatures. I have only lived for more than 5,500 years at most. More than 5,500 years. Jia Yan was shocked. You must know that he is not too clear about the actual lifespan of the lower-level domain lords, but he definitely knows that the lifespan is more than 10,000 years old, and can even reach 20,000 years old. Some long-lived races, such as the original gods, although there are no powerful people above the domain lord level in that race, Jia Yan analyzed that if they reach the lower level of domain lords, they may have a lifespan of more than 30,000 years. But this one, he is only over 5,500 years old. This is still the longevity powerhouse that outsiders talk about. Hey, friend, you look a little surprised. Don't be surprised. The training environment of Nanjing Superstar is very good, so naturally it will not be without any effort. In fact, I have been to several other big stars before, and I have also experienced similar situations. Many of them it is more or less similar to the situation of Southern Superstar, but it will be slightly better than Southern Superstar. The other party smiled and continued to get the food. Jia Yan was thoughtful and asked, my friend, when your lifespan is about to expire, why don't you live in the outside world? I have also noticed the problem of Nangxingxing's lifespan being consumed too quickly. I'm afraid it has a lot to do with the environment. If you went to live on an alien planet, you would probably be able to live for thousands of years without any problem. The other person shook his head. People are never content. You are from an alien planet, so you should have been to the Tongtian Road, right? Do you think that after seeing that scenery, you will be willing to just hibernate on the back steps of the territory lord? You watch that level of strength blooming in front of your eyes, but not pursue it? Jia Yan suddenly fell silent. He analyzed it and shook his head with a wry smile. Obviously, if it were him, in order to reach a stronger realm, enter the level of Tongtian realm and get a glimpse of the secrets of the heavens, he would do anything, even if he wastes more lifespan. After all, after thousands of years, many relatives and friends around you should also return to dust. Without care, the only pursuit is to become stronger. Fortunately, Jia Yan has not reached that age yet. If he has to do this, it will take at least a few thousand years. If he does not waste his life by staying among the superstars, it may take tens of thousands of years for him to compete. Idea. Tongtian, Tongtian, tisk, tisk, this wine should be a fine wine on the western star in the central star region of the Milky Way. I have drunk it before, and it is indeed a good wine. The other person's eyes were blurred for a moment, and he continued to drink. Jia Yan felt that the two parties were familiar with each other and continued to ask, Sir, the life-extending thing I want from you is not for my own use. I would like to ask, how effective is this thing on ordinary life forms? I've known for a long time. How old are you? You must be more than 100 years old. Haha, when I was alive, I really never saw such a gifted existence like you. People like you are so angry, so what about the time being? There will be a need for longevity. As expected, the other party sipped his wine. Jia Yan didn't worry and said directly, my friend, please answer me. Actually, there is nothing I can't answer, but let me say something in advance. All my life-extending plans are researched on the strong. If the people you want to extend their lives can't even reach the star level, I'm afraid I really can't help you. What are you doing? In other words, you can use other life-extending plans to extend the life cycle of the other person. When he is almost dead, you can use my plan. This is called putting yourself to death and living. As for whether you can survive, then just do your best to know the fate of heaven. The other party spoke concisely and to the point, and was quite a bachelor. He explained everything Jia Yan wanted to know. Death to survive. Jia Yan murmured to himself and nodded fiercely. Thank you, my friend. You, probably have no chance of living again. If you have any last words that you need my help with, I will help you complete them. For the first time, Jia Yan made a promise without any strings attached. Even if the other party wants to kill a lower-level domain lord. Of course, it is impossible for Jia Yan to agree. At most, he will ask the other party to change the conditions, but this also shows how much Jia Yan now values the information given by this strong man. Before this, he really didn't have high expectations, but now he got what he wanted smoothly, and it was not a mortal product. Naturally, he was willing to pay something for this information. No need. Didn't I say before that I had almost no relatives or friends until the end of my life? In fact, this idea of passing on the inheritance came to me at the moment of my death. Jia Yan and the other party became melancholy together. He thought that he had only lived for more than 100 years. The idea that all four elements are in vain has been born. What if you let yourself live another 1,000 years, 2,000 years, or 5 years? Will it be the same as the other party then? What's even more exaggerated is that if he doesn't stay on the superstar for a long time, his lifespan will probably far exceed that of this powerful man who claims to have longevity. After all, the other party is in the superstar. If he goes to the normal starry sky, his lifespan will be greatly improved. With his lifespan doubled, his scalp went numb just thinking about it. Without any friends or relatives, even the existence of concern finally disappeared, even the clues of kinship were cut off, everything was insignificant. Finally, what will your mentality be like? Jia Yan also began to be affected by his emotions and drank sullenly. The two of them exchanged cups and drank happily. In the end, Jia Yan's clone of the opponent's star peak couldn't stand it any longer. He shook his hand and retreated into a hidden cave. The entire ruins disappeared without any sound. Jia Yan poured his own drink and ignored him. This guy. Suddenly, Jia Yan smiled. I was affected by the other person's emotions. Old guy, if the opponent just now had the strength of a lower-level domain lord, and he took advantage of his mental fluctuations to attack, not only could he seriously injure Jia Yan, but he would also be able to seize a slight advantage. This is the mind of the veteran powerful man. Jia Yan felt that he was a little young. But it doesn't matter, he already knows very well that there is still a certain gap between himself and the lower-level veteran domain masters. This is not a problem that can be solved by just devouring more power and experiencing many difficulties and obstacles, because he must have devoured a lot of power and experienced a lot of difficulties and obstacles. Among the powerful people in the lower ranks of territory lords, when they were first promoted, which one did not show off their power for a period of time? Which one has not collided with the old and powerful? After all, we are all human beings and have similar thoughts. To this day, Jia Yan's talent is actually not much better than that of the same level. His ability to cultivate to this point is nothing more than a decisive and courageous will to move forward. But even so, he wants to. It may still take a long time to tie up with the veteran territory lord's lower level and reach the top of the territory lord's lower level. That can only be something that is slowly worked out over time. Edisha is out. After thinking about it, Edisha, who was the last one to enter the passage, was once again ahead of everyone and emerged from another passage. She looked disgraced and seemed to have encountered some situation, but her whole little face was full of enthusiasm and she was extremely happy. After all, she has passed the test. Did you get any benefits? No. Edisha has been solving problems. There are things that explode, traps, and some puzzles. Edisha has solved them all. Edisha was very happy when she found Jia Yan sitting at the table eating. Her eyes lit up. She jumped up and ran up. She sat down on the chair where the clone on the back step was sitting, picked up the leftovers with chopsticks and ate. Jia Yan wanted to say that those were chopsticks used by others, but after thinking about it, he held back. You really don't see any benefits or anything like that? No, just after every level, some bright beads would fly out, startling Edisha, and a few books fell in front of Edisha. Edisha didn't want to study, so she just threw them away. Jia Yan was startled again and said, Edisha, if you don't have any, don't you know that those are treasures? Editha stopped eating with her chopsticks and blinked her big eyes. I know, but those things are not as good as the owner's brother's things. Editha just goes to play with them. Jia Yan was in awe. He was so excited by this flattery, he stretched out his foot and made a thumbs up sign, and without saying anything else, he and Edissa sat at the table, feasting and waiting for Xiao Yuer. I originally thought that Xiao Yuer's unparalleled strength would come out after everyone else. Unexpectedly, less than half an hour after Edisha walked out, a figure walked out from another passage. It was the dusty Xiao Yu. Son. She was babbling and singing sweet songs as she flew out of the passage. She was also carrying a large baggage on her back that Jia Yan had never seen before. She paused in confusion after walking out of the passage. You two bad guys, she pointed at Jia Yan and yelled. Jia Yan was stunned, and Edisha also became weird.